Florida Medical Center.
Maybe have like a 5:30.
Okay.
Just to do
Let
it.
me make sure.
But no,
Yes, it
Too early,
is.
yeah.
Yes.
But,
I just was making sure the agenda actually
But
read correctly.
oh, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the preview worse than
Okay,
the rest of it. And I was cracking so many bad jokes. But all the staff were just thrilled with it. It was kind of fun.
There was a time when you could do just 2 little bottles of this stuff and you listen to it, and it was it. And then somebody reacted to it, so they said you can't use it.
With the first,
And that was the.
I'll take it for you, yeah.
I mean, it was
Like,
literally,
yeah,
two
this
boxes,
is my day,
you know,
trying to get what we need to be.
and it was like drinking a shot.
Because it'd be really, really good.
No, it's all that. But it's my third one. I have to have them every 5 years because my sister passed away before. I keep calling you with my mom. I keep.
He had colon cancer when he was 37.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, we prevent it. That's what they say.
I think I
I think it's in the genes.
I got a genetic thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about it.
minutes. Then we have one, so.
Then 2 minutes, everybody, 2 minutes. It seems like they would have done 15.
Start dimming the light down, and then you have to turn back on.
Yes.
One of my sister's doctors said she was interviewing her and he said, and she said, there was no other head of was it?
Yeah.
And she said, you better go to it. Okay, but I think I know where it's gonna come up with.
Yeah, right. Thanks. So, Joy and Robert and Greg for that road.
Yeah, you said
Pretty good.
that. Oh, man, my stuff is ready to go now. Clear.
Hey, we're ready to clean. I texted
So,
Mike down the street from us,
yeah.
to make sure he has the date. Cause him and I are the guys that are in the water.
I mean, I need to be.
Boots in the creek.
Run in the creek. Come on, you gotta get something that goes a
I
little
was
better.
walking down that, there's a lot of blood in the street.
I like praising the kid. I want to do something. You know, it's.
You're on the squad, buddy. You're 30 on the 17th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a rake for you, a clothes basket, so like some of that. Stuff that's like plastic and all, you can just rake it right out of the water, put it in the clothes basket, and then pass the clothes basket to folks that are on the shore. And then you pile it up, bag it up, and Rotary's cans were. Drive up dumpsters, and some, I think, scooter or someone from town, goes and picks up a lot of the stuff we set alongside the road and they throw it down. Yeah, you got waiters?
When is it? When is it?
May 17th.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, we did middle of June and there was, water was a little.
I'm
I'll get my kayak.
I've got 6 o'clock. So we're gonna get this ball rolling. It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. And I'm calling the Board of Selectmen meeting of the town of Georgetown to order. And let's go ahead and start with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call is next. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Amanda is not here yet.
She's there.
Oh, she's on. Okay. You just. Did you test your sound already?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you yet.
Do a 30-second draft.
We can sign.
We'll move on. We see her.
You have a sign, I know.
Okay, John Jennings,
Here.
Dwayne Gazinski,
Here.
Mary Smith,
Here.
and Rich Barrows.
Here.
All present and accounted for. Agenda approval. The only thing I wanted to point out was that we need to correct the dates of the payables report. It should actually be February 21st through March 9th, 2025. Any other additions, deletions?
Under our selectmen reports, can I just speak to recycling?
Yes, you can.
Thanks.
I've got something for that. Okay. If that's all, we'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as corrected.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was a tie on second.
Wayne could have it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as corrected. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 3 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Letters will be acknowledged but will not be read out loud. And anybody online that wants to speak, they could raise their hand or type into the chat. Pause for a moment. Okay, I think that's, oh, there's something.
It's just Amanda, she said don't write.
Okay, all right, so,
Mitchell Matsuo,
okay,
Preston Najaro from Doxa are here to answer questions about online bill pay when we get to that.
okay, all right. So, if we don't have any audience business, either in the house or online, we will move on. Next are the payables, and as I said, the date on that report is February 21st through March 9th, 2025. Any comments, questions on the payables?
So I have a question. Under the water fund. At the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3. Really just more for my own personal information. I don't recall seeing in the past where we paid out on these final bills, there's like 6 of them or so. And maybe they just haven't been reflected in the payables before, or I looked them, or.
There might be a different process for it. This is how I did it, so.
No, and that's fine, but so. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that these people have moved on and these were just
This is refunds,
and
some of them I needed to do from like,
prorated for when somebody else came in and, you
Yeah.
know. I guess the one that really jumped out was obviously the one for several $100s that were.
yeah, that one I did call the title company, the real estate agent, the current tenant and the old tenant, just to make sure that was the right amount, because he had paid his water bill after the title company had called me for the balance, and so they both paid, and he owed a lot, so it was, he overpaid by quite a bit.
Yeah.
So,
Like I say, I just never noticed them before,
Yeah.
and appreciate seeing the flow and that we're on it, so. Okay.
any other questions?
If there aren't any questions,
I'll make a motion to approve the payables dated February 21st of 2025 to March 9th, 2025.
Second, John.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We got a high sign from Amanda on screen, so she's also in that vote to approve.
That got your tongue?
Okay, next we have the minutes from our last regular meeting, which was on February 25th, 2025. I made a number of typo type corrections to, Bridget. And I think Mary Smith did as well, so. We should have caught anything, but please speak up if you saw something.
I trust you. I'll make a motion to approve the regularly scheduled meeting minutes as amended February 25th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 25th meeting as corrected. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. First item on our action items is a presentation by CCMRD to this board. And we've got Cameron Marlin and Jen Tuesday.
Any of those.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
And just from Georgia.
welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having us. Should we stand? Should we sit? Should we chair?
If it's more comfortable, I don't know, those aren't very comfortable, you can stand if you want.
Good sitting there straight.
Want the podium?
So many options. You can already hear the scene with the owl, you kind of need to use the podium.
Yeah, probably.
All right, cool.
Without,
Yeah.
So, I think everybody here knows me, and if I don't know you, Cameron Marlin, General Manager of the Rapid District, Director of Special Events and Adult Programming. And so we wanted to come today to kind of talk a little bit more about how CCMRD is working to serve the Georgetown community, and specifically how that relates to program fees and usage fees. So just to get us all on the same page, the mission of CCMRD is to strengthen our community through fitness, wellness, and play. We recognize that the taxpayer in Georgetown has to travel a larger distance to get to the rec center than the Idaho Springs counterpart, which is a really big reason why we work so hard and try to bring recreational opportunities to Georgetown. We want the kids in Georgetown and the people of all ages of Georgetown to be able to recreate just the same as those who are in Idaho Springs, especially those who don't have the ability to drive themselves on the highway. That said, there's an important differentiation to make between the soccer races and our really big events and the small community-focused programs that we're here to talk to you guys about tonight. So we're talking about youth basketball, youth skating lessons, soccer practice, those small things that we're hoping to get maybe 8 or 10 participants in. And many of those are your kids' neighbors and maybe your own children. So before we continue on to specifically talk about those small community focused programs, I do want to just mention the fact that we had heard at the BPC meeting that there had been some conversations around profit sharing on those big events. And I would just like to ask that if there are continued conversations that would specifically impact Slacker, that we would have an opportunity to come to the table and kind of speak to the way in which Slacker is an opportunity to backfill our reduced tax revenues that are associated with the declining production from Henderson Mine. So should that profit sharing conversation come up, I think it's important for you all to have in mind how that affects the local government special district that CCMRD is, and that your residents and taxpayers contribute to, and how that's a little bit different from some of the more profit-driven events that Georgetown hosts. So that all said, sidebar about the events, but to bring it back to the community-focused programming, I'll pass it on to Jen for more information.
So some of this comes from my original proposal to have lake or park usage fees reduced. In that, pond hockey was mentioned, we kind of circled away from that. Also, what was mentioned were smaller programming like ice skating on the lake or in Rowan Park, hockey practice, those types of just community programming. And we were kind of met with we can't change any of the fees for any of those things in that conversation. So we're just trying to, again, show you that there's a difference between the two. And we understand that events, big events that we do bring a lot of people to Georgetown for those big events, which are super important, are super different than the smaller types of community partnerships that we're looking to bring here. We do bring, programming to the schools after school, and we're in negotiations to bring some, programming to the community center as well. We just want to be able to do the same thing with the parks and lakes that are part of the town of Georgetown with our smaller programming, so that we don't have to pass that down to our community members. Obviously, with the current fee schedule, we can't not do that if we want to hold those types of programming here in Georgetown, of course we do, because we want to bring all the recreation that we can to Georgetown. So that's what we're just here to talk about. We are, looking at, our ball field is going to be remodeled into a wonderful, beautiful facility skate park, but in that time, we will lose some of our ability to recreate in Meadow Springs as well. That's a great opportunity to be able to do some of that here and keep our programming going strong and hopefully engage even more community members. But right now, we're kind of just at hold, and being able to do some of those things. So we just wanted to bring that to you all and start that conversation about how can we better partner with Georgetown and make it so it's feasible for all of us.
Any questions from the board?
I appreciate you guys opening up on Sundays and giving that a run. Like, get down to the rec center at least once a week and sometimes twice now, but on Sunday. Like, I'm not very knowledgeable about what the different fees that we're charging to do hockey practice or soccer practice. What are we charging you?
Well, so my original ask for pond hockey, the lake fee is $450 per use. So, okay, for pond hockey, tough to do ice skating 5 days consecutive weeks at $450 each time we need to use the lake.
Yeah.
And that's what, and then I'm happy to hope that was workable, but that was basically what the response was that right now we can't we're lowering the fees. Again, makes sense for pond hockey, makes sense for Slacker City Park, but a little tough for us to have skating lessons on the lake or just have our people practice hockey for pond hockey tournament, on the lake at that fee schedule. And I believe that is the same for all park usage. Bridget, is that right?
I think we're looking at the increased use of the lake. Not only this year, but in past years, you know, we can all say, you and I, especially since we live down there, because we're people of the lake. That, you know, there was a sense of some of the community that lived there when there was less activity pre-COVID, that it, you know, was this almost a private, you know, situation. And we've heard from our constituents as to asking the town how we can control the amount of lake users. And I think as a town, and we've just started in baby steps taking these steps to look at the increased use on the lake any time of the year. You know, we can attest to what we're seeing there, and to create a structure. It's one thing if you go out as an individual, or it's a different if there's an organized event, but it's still an increased use that ultimately we need to maintain. And we're seeing this, you know, outside of our lake use. You know, the county is seeing it with the trails, and you know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I know everybody knows this. So, though I'm open to that, I think we need time, and whether it's this board or with the input of parks, with the input of some policy discussions, to really look at the big picture and see what our vision is for what we can handle at the lake, and the extra maintenance. And further on down the agenda, we're adding another parks person to, or potentially adding another parks person, you know, to help with the basic, you know, day-to-day maintenance of that. And so it's one thing if you were saying, hey, the rec center's gonna be at the lake in case anybody wants to stop by and put on a pair of skates, we're bringing them free, which is one way of, you know, getting access to the community compared to continued organized events. You know what the lake fees are down in Evergreen Lake, or I would imagine you do, because hopefully you've researched that. You know, there's lake fees at Lake Dillon, you know, we're free right now. And the more those fees continue on, the more people I see coming and using ours. And what are the restrictions, or what are the controls that we put on that, so that our lake continues to be a viable, you know, entity for us all to use. And so I respect what you're asking for, but nothing's free anymore. So if it doesn't cost you directly, it's costing us directly.
Sure.
And so we just have to find that balance. And so, you know, the lake fees, I think, really blew up this year, the conversation that I'm aware of, because of the ice racing down there. And just then the continued conversations, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And so that's where we are, but we don't have answers to any of the what abouts yet.
Sure.
You know, so that's where I'm coming from. But that's me, is.
Well, what about, so a couple of quick questions. If you wanna go down there and ice skate, just like you just wanna go down there and fish, it doesn't cost anything, correct?
Right.
So I mean, I look at, you know, them bringing 20 people to ice skate in a certain area versus having the cars down there. And I'm guessing that's the same price, which is the issue. So I mean, maybe it's worth looking at, you know, I have no idea how to set up, but maybe it's worth looking at if you're gonna use a small car for 10 to 20 people versus like half the lake to drive your car around it. Cause that, on one side it seems expensive, but on the other side, driving your cars around seems super cheap. You know, it just seems kind of stupid. I don't have the answers.
So that's, and I think that's just what we need to be able to take the time to look at, you know,
Yes.
and figure that out.
There's some of the folks that I live next to that are like, we should be charging a use fee. Or a parking fee of
Yeah.
$3 or
You get
$5.
like 100 yards of the lake, 20 months.
Well, and the thing is that.
Don't laugh, because that's what he does. If you go out on the lake and Evergreen, if you go out on the lake and Evergreen with anything, they do. So we laugh, but it's just down the
And
street.
we gotta come up with another $60,000 for that second park and rec employee. And, you know, that's not small potatoes.
Well, what you're talking about is every time you go to the lake, it's $450. Well, what if what do you have, like an ice skating, like learn to skate program for like 6 weeks, right? So why don't you develop a different schedule for those events so that they're not, you know, they're like losing money trying to teach people how to skate, you know what I mean?
That's exactly.
That's what they're asking us to do. We're the that.
Oh.
So we need to figure that out, but
Well-
unfortunately, we're not gonna figure it out tonight, you know, right here, right now.
Right.
But it's a valid point.
And when we came up with this proposal, we weren't aware that this was already something that was being talked about outside of what we were asking, so we're definitely respectful of the fact that this is an ongoing conversation. We just wanna make sure we can get our explanation, and Evergreen Lake is something that we looked at for those ice skating lessons, which would have been considerably less cost prohibitive than having them here, and that's the last thing we would wanna do is move CCMRD ice skating lessons to Evergreen. When we had.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to just kind of bring back around is that the people who live in Georgetown are contributing tax dollars to CCMRD, and it's gonna be more cost effective for us to learn to skate to Evergreen. No, we want to bring some to Georgetown. And if there's too much complexity around the lake, and that's a to be determined, I hear that totally. It sounds like there's a lot of variables to unravel. But what about Strauss Park? What about Worland Park? What about City Park? And the fact that we're about to have 50% of our park space out of the question for the summer months, is that gonna be $450 per day? And how can we bring recreation to Georgetown in a way that is fair, predictable, consistent, viable?
So, I guess,
Hang on, just one sec. Bridget had a comment.
I just wanted to give a little bit more insight into the updates we're considering for the lake use policy. We're considering breaking it up by how much lake is being used how much time, if it's a full day event, if it's a 1 hour event. There's a special condition we're considering for nonprofit special districts. And then which side of the lake is being used, whether it's the lagoon or the lake. And then for parks, it is believe it's $125. And then, if there's speakers with music, it'd be another $25. It's a totally separate thing to use a park that is in the lake.
So thank you for that.
I think it would be easier for us and all the entities within the town to see what specifically you're proposing or asking for. If it's Strauss Park for 5 days for whatever, or Royland Park for the ice rink for, and so that we can start there and see how that fits in with what's being discussed, and then it gets into this other committee, and yeah, it's probably, you're not gonna have an answer necessarily in a timely fashion for maybe winter sports, but maybe we're ahead of the game then, definitely for the next season, but we're on board with spring and summer as it comes around the corner.
Well, and that's why we wanted to come here tonight, is to kind of put what worked our goals in your guys' ears as you work to flesh all of these details out. So that let us help you help up, like, let's all help each other so that Clifford County is a healthier place to live and the quality of life improves because there's more recreation for everybody. So like, I'm glad that we're here tonight as you guys are working through all of these policy considerations and you can think about how CCMRD fits into that.
Well, I think it's also helpful if it's actually proposed in writing rather than conversational. Here's the programs we would like to propose, they're listed here. We anticipate a group of 20 to 30 or 10 to 20, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If we are charged the fee for use of either lake or park, this is what we would have to charge those participants in order for us to break even. And, that just gives everybody a clear vision of what we're talking about. And some commitment for, okay, if the expectation is that we are reducing the fees and therefore there will be a reduced burden on town staff for cleaning up after, let's just say, some kind of written commitment of, we've got people who will tidy things before everybody leaves. Or,
And I think that, that speaks to, we are still gonna fill out all the same permitting that is required to reserve those spaces. That talks about sanitation and talks about trash and all the things that we would need to do. So all of that wouldn't change. We'll still be responsible for all of the things that we always have been. But I'm hearing that maybe like for now, while it's being vetted on like a case by case basis, we can ask for consideration.
well, yeah, never hurts to ask, but it's, if it's in black and white, it's easier for everybody to understand. So we would be charged this amount, and the people, the kids who participate would have to come up with X amount of dollars, and we'd like to avoid that. So here's the reduction that we would need to ask for, Yeah.
Me personally, I would love to see anything that, because this is local versus the amount of fish around the lake that don't pay anything, that takes a crazy amount of effort to keep cleaned up. So like right now, looking at it just seems really skewed on our ability to help them when we give other people free rein to come up here and do what they want. So, which I think we've been talking about that for a while now.
And then maybe if we have more, and I'm not suggesting that we charge everybody, kind of thing, or maybe we do. But if we are charging more people, then that allows us to offset
Yeah.
local rates,
Right.
for things. So there is that equitable distribution, and that's one of the things that we say in so many things. If it's already, being paid for out of our tax dollars, or we're looking at it with the fire department, well, the tourists are coming in and using the ambulance and fire service, why aren't they paying for it? And same applies to us on the lake use.
Yeah.
You know, so exactly what we're asking, well, what's the break for Georgetown people, if they can, you know, take advantage of that. You know, that might be the way that we can give the advantage to the county people for the, it's like paid parking down in Idaho Springs.
Yeah, well, I mean, too, you know, you take care of your locals, correct? You know, and so like me, I don't much use the bike path around the lake because it's so busy, and I like seeing people there, but different types of people and what they utilize. If I'm biking around the lake and I bring friends up here, we're probably gonna go to the brewery afterwards or gonna bike eat. If I grab my friends that are fishing, they're bringing a lunchbox, they're eating a sandwich and they're leaving. And so, but that's just how it is, and that's okay, but we should benefit from this to some extent. Then we can get back.
We can share.
We all
So if I
share.
wanted to like hold the lacrosse ball, like, you're gonna charge me? To use one of the.
I'm sorry, sir, you're not on the agenda. Where is that?
It's a good charge.
You're trying to cheat.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is putting together an annual calendar, what we would propose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't even heard the distinction between the larger events and the smaller. It was all just sort of,
Right.
you know,
Right,
words in the wind, and I didn't know you were making a distinction between those two types.
yeah.
So,
Which in my opinion is a win on coming up and taking up some of your guys' valuable time,
Sure.
because I wanted to
Sure.
help paint that picture.
mhm.
You know, that there's a definite big difference. And we see that there's impacts, especially with slacker, it's undeniable, and that's part of our costs, you know, that this is different from that. But so with that annual proposal, just to make sure I have everything that you mentioned, is brief description of what that program would be, the amenity that we would request, the expected numbers, and the estimated cost for the end user.
Anything else?
We can tell it. Cool.
Okay,
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
all right,
Thanks, guys.
look forward to talking again.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Oh
my God.
I fixed my sound. Sorry, I'm here.
Powerful,
All right, agenda item number 2 is a new, second full-time employee position in Parks. Good segue.
Well, things have changed on this over the last couple of weeks. I did finally get a printout of the year-end financial report, but we may be able to avoid that because the Parks and Rec Commission did what they originally said they were going to do. They looked at their budget and are willing to make changes to their 2025 budget in order to fit the cost of the extra employee increase. They're going to give up some things and so there would be no budget effect by hiring less.
That being said, they did want to request from the board, if you were feeling generous, to supplement their budget for the extra, Greg had his original, what was the difference between it wasn't that much, it was like,
67 trucks.
yeah, if you want to talk it up. Well, like
60.
some amount, you know.
I have it right here.
So the parks did want me to ask you guys if you would be willing to do a budget amendment to give them some extra funds, so they're not having to give, pay for the entire thing they're asking, so.
How much?
It's 62,000
So,
So for the whole thing?
to have to transition our part-time employee that we have in seasonal for the summer into a full-time employee for the year.
so it's my understanding that we took in about 20 grand in lake use fees for ice racing. Close, 10 grand?
I'm not sure
I
about
think
that.
that money goes to the promotions.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So when we're taking in these special event applications and we're taking in the $450 lake use fee for pond hockey and the other pond hockey, why isn't that, and I don't need an answer now, but I'd like an answer, why aren't those funds going into maybe parks that, to me, that makes sense. I'm sure there's a reason why it may not be, but I'd like to know, I'd like to know what that is.
I thought they did.
Well, it goes into the general fund, which parks draws their expenditures out of.
It's not a one-to-one thing. It's
Yeah.
a bunch of money goes into the general revenue, and you guys decide how to spend that.
Right.
Well, but, so did we actually, okay, maybe
You're
we
gonna
look.
pull out the weapon,
I think it would be helpful,
Do I does anybody know what?
it would be helpful
parks
to
do?
know how much money
Well, yeah.
is, on hockey and whatnot, so.
and then
I
how
would
much
like
we
to-
budgeted.
Yeah, so how much, so we go, well, this is real fair, we should be
So it sounds,
allowing this money back.
So I'd like to do some research on that before we say, oh, great, Parks, thanks for stepping up and filling in the amount for the employee to facilitate that, but then we're still back to the same position of, well, why didn't we just fund the 65 grand or whatever it was from from.
yeah.
So
Well,
on the,
like, we are, because it's out of our general fund, we're funding it, but it would be nice, really nice to know if we're getting extra monies. Or again, fees and stuff like that, what that amount is. Is
You
that?
wanna know about any extra revenue we're getting this year in general.
Yeah, if it's
How much we
possible.
budgeted and where's it going? Without-
You guys wanna know the state of the budget. So Greg, can you speak on that?
Well, it'd be really hard to predict the state of the budget this early. But there was $2.1 million cash in the general fund that we were in.
Parks also, they do have some cash from last year that they could potentially spend on things. But we wanna make sure that their budget is sustainable, we don't wanna overspend their budget every year. We wanna make sure that whatever we allot to parks and whatever permanent positions they're trying to add can be paid for out of that budget appropriately every year, so they're not drawing off of the cash reserve all the time, that's not the intent of it, so we're.
Well, I would like to see some sort of like, I don't know, maybe it's a use fee where that helps, alleviate that $60,000 and it's something you can actually predict after a certain amount of time. Or, if we're gonna have a second person, can they do with training, can they do some code enforcement? So that way, cause there's a lot of people that have used the lake, that live by the lake, letting their dogs go wherever, that's a lot of extra cleanup for our guy over there. I would like to see us find a funding stream, and I think those would be two options. To where if our parks folks can write a ticket for folks that are trashing the
Something
place. I don't know.
Parks is talking about is parking, paid parking in the same vein as Idaho Springs does, where locals aren't paying, you register and you get to park for free if you're within Clear Creek County, if you're registered here. And if you're not, then you pay essentially a use tax, but it's parking, that's how we would regulate it.
At the lake,
At the lake.
At the lake.
has that been approved through BLM?
Not yet.
They are just thinking about it, and Jerry is talking to BLM about a variety of uses down at the lake,
Yeah.
so that is one of the things that he's considering, I think. Amanda has.
Yeah, I see that. Go ahead, Amanda.
I just have a quick question. Is the park sales tax, is that specifically for capital improvement or can that go into, because isn't there a part of our sales tax collection that is specifically earmarked for parks?
Yes.
And is that only earmarked for, can we only use it on capital or can we use it towards staff?
I don't recall that it was restricted to just capital improvements.
So knowing that Strauss
It's-
Park is done, is it possible, because I mean, when we approved the budget, we initially approved on 1 full-time and 2 full-time seasonal employees. Obviously, there's, that staffing need has been adjusted. Is it worth looking at seeing if our sales tax projection would support, at the moment I would be concerned about it, but could the sales tax projection support that expansion of the full-time position?
There's one consideration is that's a sundown.
Yeah, I wasn't
So
sure when it
you'll-
expired.
I think-
Terminate.
I think it terminates in 29, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
But don't quote me on it, it's somewhere in there.
it's just a
Um,
funding thought.
okay,
And I'd be real nervous about, that coming sales tax income for this year. I think it's gonna be, significantly lower. There was,
there's a possibility, just. For instance, Idaho Springs has.
Yep.
Experienced a 2% reduction in, their sales tax revenues.
Just for this month,
Yeah,
for the year, they're still up.
they're still.
I would be
but-
curious. I mean, I can say just definitively for February, we were even to 2024. I do attribute a lot of that to pond hockey. Just
Okay.
if I'm using like the baseline of like the roundabout. I mean, again, we're missing like huge businesses in like the 6th Street area, and then we also have the Family Dollar that's been vacant for some time. So I think that is going to contribute to some of it, but I'm trying to think outside of the box in a way that we can not just pull out a general fund. We know the position's needed, but I do have concerns we can't afford the position. And that's what I'm just trying to.
Well, just to be clear, the Parks Commission has agreed to alter their budget, so not change the budget to pay for that position. They think it's important to maintain our parks, so they are going to fund that position. It'll be other projects that they cut,
So
so.
could we move forward with the parks position now that we have more answers to that? And so that we can make that change in personnel, because I understand it's going to be an internal transfer. And then let's have parks put some information together. We can look at what our special tax structure is. See if that can't be offset and come back to us with a proposal, whether it's next meeting or the following meeting from parks, with parks input also.
Yeah.
So that we're looking at it, or maybe there's a compromise, if it's 60, maybe we can find 40, and then they can reprioritize what they're giving up, but we recognize the need, and I don't think anyone here doesn't identify with that we need that person.
Yeah, I mean, with Argentine being extended down to 22nd Street, with all the infrastructure that's brand new and all the infrastructure that's going to be new, Kevin can't do it all by himself.
Oh, exactly.
Of course.
No, and I want to support Kevin. I don't want to seem like we're not. I just have budget concerns, but Parks is good for. Cool.
And I like the separation that it's parks, it was, I know there was mention in here of sharing it with road and bridge, and, that doesn't cut it in the long term, then who's the priority? And parks
Right.
needs to have its own priority.
It also makes the workers' comp and wages, everything really.
Yeah,
And I will say this, that, Kevin and Road and Bridge tend to work as a team. If there's an emergency that's, where there's somebody who's needed, those guys step up. So to have an extra guy, well, it's really just Mickey. Mickey's changing from Road and Bridge to
Not Mickey.
no,
Mitch.
Mitch, I'm sorry. I thought I had a completely different guy in mind.
you were mixing up your M&Ms.
I was with him. So, ouch. Anyway, but it's, nonetheless, I think that, it's just it's the same team, just different players.
Well, and just to put it back in perspective, when the budget was being drafted, Kevin actually changed what he would prefer, and we just at that point had lost the treasurer, and so we just didn't have the personnel in-house to shift that clearly in the draft budget and make sure that we had all of the new salaries in the right place and all of the benefits in the right place. We just didn't have that capability. So we ended up shifting it to 2 part-time seasonal people. And this having those two become one full-time year-round is lots better for the parks.
So the motion is to, go ahead and make that move
Mhm.
and have Greg go ahead and work with Kevin, reallocate the existing funds right now so he can make the move. And then we, as a board, Park and Rec Commission, will work together to figure out some of the stuff that they've given up over the next few weeks or month or two, how we might be able to,
allocate
better
funds.
fund those.
Mhm.
Okay,
So what is the proper motion?
Just down there.
okay. I move to authorize the interim town administrator to reallocate parks budget to cover the cost of a second full-time parks employee.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries.
See you guys, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Next, we have, public hearing and consideration on second reading of ordinance number 1, series 2025, natural medicine amendment. I will go ahead and read the title. I'm moving to that page. Ordinance number 1, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Georgetown, Colorado, amending the town's land use code regarding natural medicine. And let me go ahead and open the public hearing. It is 6:43 p.m. And do we have anyone here? Either we don't have anyone in the room, but do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to make a comment?
Anyone in the chat is not allowed to speak, so if they want to talk, they'll need to indicate to us if they're interested by typing in the chat.
Yes. We will wait a moment or two. While we're waiting for people to type into the chat, do you want to give any background or attorney viewpoint on this ordinance?
I think that, my understanding is that this went to, first reading, there was some changes that were asked, we talked about it at the last meeting. And it sounds like the changes that were requested at the first reading, were made, in satisfaction of the board. So we're now here for second reading. Jerry's, memo that appears, in the packet dated February 17th, I believe addresses all of the concerns. Happy to speak on any particular questions you may have.
Seemed pretty clear.
Yep. And nobody's appearing in the chat from what I can see at this distance.
Have we had any applications for any natural medicine facilities yet?
Okay.
Cheers.
I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. It is 6:45 p.m. And open it up for board discussion. Any further board discussion?
I'm pretty happy with all the things that they have that are safe. You know, it's kind of a state driven
Yes.
thing, so, you know, we can always back off, we can push back from them, so I'm good.
Anything else? Okay. Well, I think there is a recommended motion in there.
Is the ordinance covered number?
No, there isn't. So,
Yeah, there is a recommended motion at the end of Jerry's letter,
oh, okay.
but he left the number blank, is it number one?
It is ordinance number 1, series 2025.
So I'll make the motion to approve ordinance number 1, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Georgetown, Colorado, amending the town's land use code regarding natural medicine on the second reading. I'll second. John.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1 on second reading. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on, we have agenda item number 4, which is utility bill pay software. Hand them in to Kasia.
Okay, so all of you have a sheet in your packet that has a comparison document for the 3 vendors that I spoke to. I also took the liberty of inviting them to this meeting, so Bridget, if you could allow Derek share Nick photos, Preston and someone else that he's with. To talk so that they can answer any questions that you have about it. You know, I think that all of you are aware that our billing system currently is a little outdated. So the way it works right now is we print out water bills and we mail them to everybody, which mostly works for people in town, but anyone out of town, that sometimes takes a really long time. The post office randomly sends us some amount back for no apparent reason. Sometimes the ones that do make it are torn or ripped in half, or, you know, it's just sort of a messy system. If people never receive it, they don't know what their balance is on their water bill. And while we know that there's a base rate of $144 for 7,000 gallons or less, anything more than that does have additional fees. Sometimes people pay late and there's a late fee they don't know about. It's just messy. No one knows their balance. They have to call us all the time to find out how much they owe us. And then half the time people don't receive that invoice or that bill until halfway through the month, and then they mail us a bill back and then that gets lost and it's just messy. So most people in the world these days are using online bill payment services where you can log into an account and you can see what your balance is and you can set up automatic payments and you can do all of this stuff much more easily than checking your mail, maybe getting a bill and then mailing a check back to us, or going on our website where we do have an online payment service. But again, it doesn't tell you your balance. It's not connected to your account specifically. People put random addresses, random account numbers. We get payments for other Georgia towns in the United States. So it's just messy. We get about 700 transactions for utility bills every single month. And of those 700 transactions currently, between 86 and 100 are direct bank ACH deposits. And then about 80 of those are credit card bills, and that fluctuates month to month. Sometimes people come in and pay with a check. Most people pay with check still because it's free. Our current billing system does charge a 4% fee or a $1 fee if you're doing the bank transaction directly. So we have these bill pay options. There's express bill pay, which is the first one, if you want to look at their contract. It didn't include their presentations because all 3 of them are really long. You know, that's what the chart is for, so you can sort of compare the services. Express bill pay was developed in conjunction with Cassell, which is our accounting software. It's the company that Cassell recommends, it's the company that Lorraine recommends, it's the company that Idaho Springs uses and a lot of other municipalities in the state. We also have PSN, which is a competitor, and Doxo, which is a competitor. So, like I said, all of these people are online if you have questions for them specifically. I estimated, looking at the online bank transactions, what I asked from all 3 of them was to offer us a quote where we eat some of the check, like ACH transaction fees, but we don't have to do that with any of them. You can decide to go with this bill pay and make the customer pay for that transaction fee instead of us. The reason that I asked them to do that is because, like I said, a lot of people pay with check because they like that free option. They don't want that additional $2 fee or whatever it is. And so this would incentivize people to actually go onto their online payment system and pay through that portal. And just, you know, the way that would work with all three of them is making that payment, it would be added to their account automatically. So right now, we have to look at every single transaction. Hopefully it's clear which account that transaction goes to. And then we have to manually apply it for each individual transaction. None of these services would make us do that. All three of them would allow us to easily apply those payments directly to those accounts. In the case of PSN and Express Bill Pay, those are live connected to the utility software. So that would update as soon as somebody made a payment, basically, or end of day. You know, we can change that setting depending on like the last day, you know, so we can apply late fees correctly. Doxo has a live option that costs money. The presentation that they've offered would do a batch import where basically like people would pay on Doxo. We download that document, it gets uploaded into Cassell. So it wouldn't be a live thing, but it would still be one transaction instead of every individual transaction. Okay, any questions about any of that?
So that transaction fee for 700 times a month, it would be about $2 that we're gonna be eating, so $1,400.
At most, that's if every single person paid
Using,
with the ACH, yeah. Credit card transactions, I asked them to keep that with the customer, and then a check or cash would still be free in the office, so.
Are we still sending out the bills, or is the billing only going to be seen on the online payment site?
We would still be mailing the bills. However, a feature of, I think all three of them, is that if somebody opts into paperless billing, it will tell Cassell to stop printing a bill for us. And so we will only be mailing bills to people that have not opted into paperless. So we also will see less paper bills over time.
So we'll see a reduction in our postage
With all three.
costs.
Preston, does Doxo offer the paperless option?
Yes, we do.
Can people opt for a paperless bill, but then go ahead and pay by check?
Yes, it would just
Okay.
prevent Cassell from printing the bill out.
Okay,
They can pay however they want to.
how much time do you think per month this will save you?
I don't know. Lynette has been doing most of our cash receipting for the last couple of months. How many hours would you say you put into?
well, I am getting faster. But there's only so much fast you can get if you're gonna maintain accuracy. And, so each one of those checks needs to be entered, just physically, and you're clicking through, and there are quite a few that you end up having to do research to find out which account it's supposed to be applied to, because there's no account number on the check, or they don't have their street address on it, and the names are difficult to match up because it's a tenant, or the property has just recently sold and this is the buyer that's now paying, and the title company didn't give us enough information to set up the new account, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the case of the online payments, you're taking the information for each of these transactions from a screen, and you're transferring it over to the Cassell screen in the same kind of bits that you would be on a check. And you also don't have always the full account number to go by. You're still looking things up, so,
That person doesn't even live in Georgetown. They live in a different Georgetown.
yes, a
so-
different Georgetown. And you're making sure that you've covered all the bases for finding out whether that person truly isn't here in this Georgetown, so, I would say, depending on how often you're doing deposits, if you're doing them weekly, I would say in a good 3 hours for that, batch of,
We're talking at least a day's time, if not more, over the course of
if
the
not
month.
more, yeah. Because then on the very last, the very last deposit you're pulling together would be that last day's worth of the month's checks, and then all of the online payments. It's time consuming.
So it's 11 p.m. on March 31st, and I say, oh shit, I forgot to pay my water bill, and I go online with any of these, and I pull my bill up and I pay it. This might not be really a bill pay feature, but is the town gonna recognize that I paid my bill at 11 o'clock on March 31st and I'm okay? Or do we have this 5 p.m. end of business day?
And then there's
Yeah.
a float.
Or, oh my God, what if it was the weekend?
I think usually with like those online bill pays, it's up through that actual day.
It's through the time you pay it.
I was gonna say, they pretty much timestamp the transaction.
So they do timestamp it. All three of these softwares handle it differently as far as the late fee goes. So, Preston, we can see you already. Do you want to talk on late fees real quick?
Yes, so Doxo actually has the capability of creating a pending collections report. So whenever a customer makes a payment for their water bill, you will be able to see real-time payment information within our software tool. However, there is a delay of 1 to 3 business days. This just guarantees that we're not going to be sending you funds that are not sufficient, that will result in returns. So you have the capability to pull that pending collections report and see, okay, these people made the payment over the weekend. Here's our cutoff date. And you could choose to honor that payment, or you could go ahead and put a late fee attached to that payment.
Nick, do you want to talk about PSN?
Yeah, so very similar experience as what Preston just mentioned. One thing that we can do though is that we are what's called a pay fax. So if there is a payment like an insufficient, it will get stopped immediately from us. It won't make it to the bank. And typically we can make that deposit in about a day. So it's not going to be a 3-day hold. And then you use our account management center where you can tack on that late fee or whatever you'd like to add on. In that software. So you'd be, putting that onto the charge.
And then Derek is with Express Bill Pay.
I echo what Preston and Nick said. Pretty much the same thing, especially with you guys integrated with your Cassell ERP software. It does have real time and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's pretty much the same, or very similar, I should say.
Even if you don't get the money, if you pay it at 11 o'clock at night, it's still recorded, it's paid, right?
So we get to look at a report basically and decide.
So it'll be an interpretation that we make as a town as to how we're going to accept the payment on Sunday, March 31st. I don't know if Sunday is March 31st, I'm pulling this up, right? But so that could be though a perk that we're dangling in front of our water customers, our residents, to say, oh, but now you have just bought yourself a couple of extra days or a little bit more leniency kind of thing, and encourage them to use that rather than rely on the current method.
And like the average monthly bill, what are we passing on to the customer?
Our
Any additional?
minimum bill is $144. I've not run an average. I don't know how helpful that is because we have so many bills for like commercial spaces
Sure.
that are a lot higher. But most residences are paying about $144. There are some people that go over. It's usually not by a lot unless they have a flood or something.
They're the ones with the really green one. But
Yeah,
yeah,
7,000 gallons is a lot.
that's
Not
a
many
lot, that's
people
like
go over.
2,000 gallons more than what
So we add like-
normal.
$10.
I mean,
Amanda's got a comment.
I just had 2 questions. In case I don't know if you can answer them or not. One, do any of the softwares incentivize in a way for patrons to go paperless? Like, could you maybe reduce that charge on the ACH that we would maybe pass on to the customer if people were willing to go in on paperless? To like, is that, I don't know if that's a possibility or not. or if that would get too messy, because it's already messy.
I think payment fees being applied, like, to different people would get really messy really
That's totally fair.
quickly. Yeah, I think paperless sort of incentivizes itself.
I agree with you completely, but I recognize that sometimes paper makes people feel better. The other question actually kind of relates to how the skepticism I think that exists with our current software is not just its clunkiness, but people are very afraid of their data. What are these companies doing to, like, how can we ensure our community that the data of the user is being well protected, and that for some people, there was some like high points in there, but I didn't get through a lot of like the deep dive stuff. So I don't know if that's something that anyone wants to speak to, because I think that'll be a concern for people.
Yeah, so I'll point out one of my comparison things is guest payments, where you can pay without logging in. And it will confirm your, like, you have to put the correct account number and the correct information for that account. You can pay without it saving any of your information.
Okay.
And all three of them have that option, so.
Okay. So to kind of tag on to Mary's question though, do all three of these have the capability to set a cutoff different than midnight of the last day of the month? So if we wanted to say, we want to stick with 5 p.m. on the last business day of the month, they could all accommodate that as a cutoff?
I believe we set the due date, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Just asking.
Any other questions? I do want to, sorry, Mary, do you want to go first?
Maybe we're gonna answer my question.
I do just want to say, I talked to Ryan about this because it's a water utility thing. The expense would come out of his budget. He is supportive of the idea. He's a little skeptical about paying for any of the fees. He feels that the check option is free already and that we should keep that fee, the $2 fee, with the customer. So I just wanted to give you his take on that, so.
But I would counter that slightly with the fact that part of the treasurer's salary comes out of his budget as well. And so if we're saving the treasurer time, it benefits.
Mhm.
So
we also, hopefully, like you said, postage would go down a bit. So I think the net, I mean, it probably will be a little bit more expensive with the fee. But our treasurer would have a lot of time, extra time to do stuff, so.
Figure out something, sure.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So at some point over the last couple of months, and I don't even know if it was specific to this, there was a conversation about changing maybe our utility software.
Neptune, that's our meter reading software.
And so if we were to change that, are any of these?
None of them interact with Neptune directly. They all interact with Cassell, which is
Okay.
what we put our Neptune into. If that makes sense.
So we're not losing an opportunity, or we're not losing the benefit because Neptune doesn't already talk to their systems anyway.
Correct.
Okay, so if we change, that would just be maybe potentially another savings down the line. I just think from other people that have expressed their opinions, when we increase our water rates every year, even though they only go up $4, it's like pulling teeth. And so I think we just need to recognize that even though it's not a huge amount, if there's an extra couple of dollars that is passed on to our water users, that we're just gonna have to deal with that. And so however we deal with that, but, you
Should come
know.
with a thank you note.
So I just think we need to be more, I just think we have to be, conscious and conscientious of that. And if there's still a free option that that people can use to pay, you know, that's.
Are we having a problem with Neptune at all?
I don't know if we wanna talk about that right now.
Okay.
It's-
That's not on the agenda either.
If anybody gets off tracks, have somebody, raise their hand and make sure.
So,
So the training fees and stuff is just the one company, Express.
Yeah, express bill pay, and you should, note in their contract, they do spell out the fee schedule. And I'm putting estimated $1,600. Derek, can you speak on, cause you mentioned that I think it's $500 a day for training. How many days of training is typical? Cause I only counted one, so.
Yeah, that's correct. Kezia, or Kezia, sorry, Kezia, it's just a one-time fee, $1,000 and I think 500 for training. Yeah, training is $500, one-time fee.
But it's per day, so how many days, but you're just
It's
expecting
just be one day.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm.
But the other systems don't need it, the other systems don't need training.
The other systems have waived the fees for the training,
Oh,
so
I see.
they would need training, but they waived the fees, so.
One advantage I see to either, express bill pay or what is it, PSN is that they're tied directly into Cassell. And so your payment registers immediately, whereas the Doxo batches it. And so if they're doing a 3-day hold while the funds are verified, it could delay us in being able to generate the next round of bills. Wouldn't it?
Depending on our, yeah, I mean.
How the month cuts off.
Mhm.
If it cut off like middle of the week, you might end up having to wait until further into the next week to be able to generate the next round.
Yeah.
Because of late charges or something?
No, because they're batching it and holding it for 3 days. They're not actually applying all of the last payments from the month.
The way
the
their
last day
system
of-
works is they wanna verify the payment before they send it to us,
Okay,
and it takes a little bit of time.
but when do you start working on the next month's bill? You start the first week.
The first week, yes. And just so everybody knows, our current deadline for receiving any bill is 5 PM on the last business day of the month, which really gets people in November, because Thanksgiving always gets, but, because Wednesday is the last business day of November typically. So we would set that cutoff, and they have a report of anyone that's made the payments that day and time, but we would have to wait a couple days to verify that those payments went through. And then, it would just delay our,
Just with docs, so
Correct.
not with the other two.
yeah.
But so under the payment options, you don't have anything listed under express bill pay. There's limited ones under PSN, and Doxo seems to take most, but I'm guessing that maybe there's some omissions here.
Yeah, that line got, I gave them an opportunity to review this, and Doxo wanted me to add the payment options for them, and I did that, and I didn't have an opportunity to run it by Derek again, who was express bill pay, so. Also, I think, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wanted to mention that you accept Amex, Discover, PayPal, and Venmo. That's in addition to Visa, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to kind of touch on that. So the Visa is usually a given. Basically, any of those are normally accepted, but we do Amex, Discover, PayPal, and Venmo all at the same rate. We pay the surcharge, so your customers can take Amex and Discover and all that jazz. Not have to worry about any extra fees or anything like that.
What about express pay? Because there's nothing in here for express pay.
And then Derek, what payment options do you accept at Express Bill Pay?
Pretty much the same for the most part. We do have, well, you can log on to the mobile app. It's free, so Apple, Android, and you can do Google Pay there and whatnot. So debit, credit card, all that good stuff, ACH, e-checks, yeah,
Standard ones,
Okay.
years, okay.
pretty standard.
Okay.
They also, and I wanna say Nick explained this to me, but, Express Bill Pay calls out specifically bank bill pay, which is where a lot of people have their banks mail checks for them. And what that would allow them to do is they can say, we want you to pay this bill, and then they will talk to Express Bill Pay. And so all of those mail checks will also be automatically credited to their accounts. Is that correct, Eric?
That's correct.
They'll turn them into an electronic transfer? Okay.
That's
Yes, so
correct.
instead of getting-
And the turnaround is pretty quick.
Yeah, so right now we get like a stack of checks from one bank, because they send all of them at the same time, because, you know, they're all for us. And, you know, we process each of those individually, but this would make it automatic, so.
What is your turnaround on those? Is it the next day? I mean,
It's like, most of them are what, like 5 days? We can do it in like 48 hours.
Okay.
What?
And does PSN and Doxo do that too?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this really quick. So I did not include this in the proposal because we did not talk about it in our initial meeting, but we do have that, and that is at a 25-cent rate. I don't know if that got added into the document from the last time I checked it. So we can add that as well. And our turnaround on that is 24 hours.
And remind me who you are.
Nick from PSN, Nick Photos.
Thank you.
I did have the 25-cent, Nick, that's in there.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the benefit to town staff of, you know, if we said pick one, because of how one software talks to the other and what your research is, what is town staff suggesting?
I'm suggesting Express Bill Pay. The functionality of the actual app and the website, I think, was the nicest, user-friendly. It's something that municipalities all over the state have verified as something they think is a great service. It works, you know, they were literally built in the same building as Cassell. Like, they were a feature of Cassell for a really long time, so their integration with them is really smooth. And it's also the most affordable in the long term for the town, so.
PSM, what do you want to tell us that we should think of you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Express Bill Pay is a great company, completely get that too. One thing that I would mention is, again, we do have that same live integration with Cassell. And I think one thing that sets us apart is our customer support. We hear it a lot from our smaller towns. We are under an umbrella. So our sister company, Invoice Cloud, they do, you know, the billing for larger cities like Atlanta, Georgia, Boston, Massachusetts, the same thing. And we're able to have that backing to where we can provide the same experience to smaller towns that we kind of work with all the time. What we do is the day that you guys sign with us, we assign you a service account manager. That person is your main point of contact for all of your training, marketing, implementation, and everything so on. So if you ever have an issue, it's not a 1-800 desk, it's not a helpline. You're calling someone up, hey, Rich, I have an issue. We get it squared away that day, and we have the capability to do that. The other thing would be our live call center. We have a live call center here in the US, open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where you guys can call up, or your customers can call up our reps and talk to them and get a payment made through, you know, actually talking to a live person here in the US, speaks English or Spanish. So that's just a couple of things that really set us apart. But again, everyone here is from a great company, so I'm sure you guys will make the right decision. Thank you.
So your customer service actually extends to our our water customers, not just town being your customer?
Yes, so our live call center is what's going to be open to your town customers. And then our SAM, that one main point of contact, will most likely be the one who's in touch with your staff. But if a problem extends, you know, to the staff, they obviously can get the SAM involved if needed. And they can kind of run through our team. But our biggest thing is we bring our team in and we're there to help you. It's a mutual beneficial business, right? We don't just leave you and say, hey, you know, thanks for signing up. It's been great. we'll come in, we'll help you with that marketing, we'll help you with that training, and we'll be there along the way. We want to make sure this works for you because we're in the business of building partnerships, not just trying to get as many people to sign up as we can. We want this to work out well.
Little bit.
So, why should we be picking him?
Hi, thanks for taking the time. My name is Mitchell Matsuo. I actually work with Preston. I work with billers and municipalities just like yourselves to make sure that you have an outstanding bill pay experience for yourselves and your community. One of the most defining, there's a few very defining characteristics of Doxo. The number one being we offer a 100% free online e-check payment method for your entire community. That's no fee passed to you. That's no fee passed to your competitor, or sorry, not competitor, your residents. And one of the interesting behaviors that we see having distributed free payment solutions to municipalities all over the country, including several in Colorado. Residents tend to choose the path of the least payment fee. And as soon as residents find out that there's a card fee and that there is now this other e-check option that doesn't cost you anything, you're going to see a certain volume of people shift from a card payment method to this perceivably online free e-check. We've supported this for countless billers across the country who all tell us most people prefer a card, most people prefer coming in the office to say hi, drop off a check. And typically when they get exposed and are offered the free option, we see over half will take that free option. So I ask that when you consider the cost equation to both your community and to the staff that you all work here at the town, that you consider the cost of what would happen when people start to pay by e-check instead, because it's free. One thing else that makes us very different, there will never be an NSF, an insufficient fund, that your staff ever works with. That means there is no penalty fee passed to your staff, and therefore no penalty passed to your end community. That's one of the two of the most defining characteristics about Doxo. Outside of that, you do have three top tier online bill pay companies in front of you. There are many similarities between us. We offer a lot of similar capabilities. There's a lot of different ways to slice and dice our products in different offerings at different price points. The final thing that I will leave this team with that is different outside of all the same capabilities that echoed by Nick and Derek, again, a lot of us are very similar in nature. Doxo, we also support municipalities using us as a supplemental option. And what that comes with, it's a zero term, cancel anytime opportunity to offer your residents a 100% free online payment method. Those are the three primary characteristics. One, again, is zero cost e-check for you and your residents. And then zero NSF capability. You'll never handle a bad payment. You'll never pass that fee to your community, which is something that's hard to foresee. It's hard to understand how many people in your community will process a bad check, kind of like what you talked about earlier. It's 11:59 and I might make that payment to buy myself a little bit more time. We eliminate that possibility. There's no NSFs in our world. And finally, we are supplemental. You can attach us to the current Colorado system that I see on your website today. You could attach us to any of the fine vendors you see in front of you. Those are three unique characteristics that define us and separate us from other online bill pay companies.
How do you offset the NSF fee? Like, I'm curious about that. Like, do you guys just eat it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of really interesting ways about how Doxo is structured. So Doxo started in 2007, and the whole idea of starting Doxo was we wanted to make bill pay online easy, cheap, free, and convenient for everybody. And so one of the ways that we've set up our business as part of our secret sauce, it's also how we're able to offer e-checks for totally free. We've structured our business so that as Doxo grows, the actual incremental costs of both processing an e-check and an NSF gets continually smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's kind of negligible at this point. And we know on average The possibility of an NSF is a certain percentage of our total business. And it's a strategic lever we have deployed in our business so that more communities can take advantage of not charging NSFs.
Kasia, I mean, you don't need to like get into the dirty details, but I mean, do you deal with a lot of NSFs and return checks each month?
No,
Oh,
we
okay.
get maybe 1, 2. I think total, the whole time I've been working the treasurer position, I've gotten 5.
Okay.
So do any of these pay systems work for us to receive other online payments?
Yes, all of them receive other online payments, very important, because if we switch away from SIPA, which is my intent, I made sure all of them accept other kinds of payments, so.
So we can set up all the rest.
Mhm.
Okay.
They wouldn't be in the same system as the utility bills, because you wouldn't have to log into your account and fill in all that stuff. It's
Well, you wouldn't be necessarily doing it on a regular basis either.
exactly.
So, but I mean, if you wanted to do a building permit, or you needed to do a vendor license, or a special event, or a living permit fee, they could do it all through any of these.
Yep.
You know, and so that could be, in those cases, just for sake of question, we're trying to limit the cost to our utility customer and keep that cost down. Could we could they have a zero fee cost in a sense, but if some of the other ones wanted to process through online, then there would be, then the fee could be, you know, charged to the customer?
I'm not sure.
I know that like the fee schedule is determined by the amount of transactions they expect to receive from us. So they do set that schedule individually, for us. And well, I should say PSN and Express Bill Pay do. I think Doxos is fixed, but, you know,
Picking and choosing would be hard.
Yeah.
they are separate, so maybe, but it's definitely harder to predict the amount of transactions you're gonna get for other stuff per month. It varies quite a bit more than utility bills.
Well, but if we're expanding, if we do expand it to other services though, and we're eating the cost then on the treasurer's side, we're going to have the separation of, it's not coming out of our water fund. If someone's paying for a building permit, you know, on this, and so there is gonna be a little bit of that, you know.
Well, and business licenses, renewals.
I mean, so there is gonna be some of that staff time on it, so that, I was just curious, and, you know, one, that they were compatible with additional use other than just their utility use or bills.
Lodging tax also.
The other service is for any payment we want to set up because it doesn't have accounts the same way that water utilities does. So it's gonna be a miscellaneous payment that we have to process anyway, so whatever we want it to be. Do any of the three of you want to comment on the billing service that's outside? I see Nick has his hand raised.
Yeah, so to touch on that for us, what we would do for you, we call that a cloud store. We build those portals out for free. We can build them out for basically anything you want to take. I work with some towns that do dog licenses, some that do, lake rentals, whatever the case is. Most commonly, what we'll do is we'll build the portal out for free, and we will carry over your utility rates if you want to do it that way. But we can obviously, like Tasia mentioned, take a look at pricing based on the amount of transactions, the how large the bills are, things like that, because that can obviously change things. If we're talking about taking like a $5,000 payment for something or whatever the case is, obviously a percentage might not make sense. But that's the most common way that we will build out those portals.
Derek, do you want to comment on that?
I'm sorry, I kind of missed the question there. It was kind of
So
difficult to hear.
We're talking about billing services that are not utility bills. So we receive payments for licenses, permits, lake fees, everything. business licenses. So what Mary wants to know is if the fee schedule can be different for those bill processing, to maybe offset some of the costs for our water utility people.
I believe they can. I'd have to double check that and confirm that. I'm just a little bit newer, but I believe that that is the case as well.
So if we were to start out with our utility, this goes to all of you guys. Number one, number two, and door number three, because Jerry's not here. If we start out with our utility bills, which I'm assuming that's our focus here, and I kind of got off track, but 2 to 3 months down the line, we start building these other programs, we're still within the fees established here for the setups, the most of DOXO and PSN have waived their setup fees. The training would have already been there if we're going with Express. We're not adding anything, we're not adding any charges to us to add on. Is that true? Express, DOXO, and PSN?
That's correct for Express.
Yeah, same in our case. There'll be no extra charge to build out those portals. And since we're cloud-based, you can 6 months down the line, you can add stuff. 8 months down the line, you can add stuff whenever you'd like to. And most likely, if that was the case, like I said, we would just carry over the credit card rate that you have on utility, unless it was a special case where we can, change that if we need to.
Yeah, this is Mitchell from Doxo. Same applies. To us, it's a matter of adding a couple of drop downs that you wanted to add a different service to the payment options. And there at Doxo, there is no training cost. It's not being waived for the city. There is zero cost for us to train and spend time with you to learn our product. It's the easy button, so we don't charge for it.
Express, can you talk to us about your customer service to not only our town staff, but to our water customers? That's similar to PSN described?
Yeah, our customer service is, I believe, really top notch. We have customer support Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I believe we've grown to about 24 people that take calls all day, and those calls are for your customers, but also for the city or for the town or whatnot. So if Kasia has any questions or whatnot, she can certainly call that as well. And I believe that that's one of the things that people love most about Express Bill Pay is our customer support, as more and more payment solutions and providers are somewhat going away from the customer support for the most part.
I want to point out that PSN does have a surcharge for processing payment over the phone, so they do have customer service, I think 24/7, but there's a surcharge for that.
But if a customer got the information that they needed and then decided to go online instead to make the payment, then they wouldn't have to worry about that surcharge if they wanted to be there.
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry, don't want to cut you off.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I can clear that up. So what we do have is we have surcharges for our IVR phone and our live call center. Now, for you to ever be charged by either of them, it's not something that it's gonna, you're gonna call and get stuck on a meter and it's gonna be running by the minute. That's not the case. You have to go through the whole thing with the rep, and the rep will say, okay, you want to pay make the payment on 1312 Cherry Lane. It's $36 to do that. It's going to be a surcharge of $295 to use the service, and the credit card rate of 3.25%. Are you sure you want to proceed X, Y, and Z? So they'd have to go through the whole prompt. It's not something where we're trying to get your customers. The reason why we put that service in place is because we know that not everyone has a smartphone, so we want to cover all the bases, right? We want to make sure this is accessible to every kind of person that lives in your town, not just the younger folks with their Apple Pay and Google Pay, things like that, right? We want to make it as accessible as we can. So that's kind of the case when it comes to the live call center payments.
All three of you have monthly charges ranging from 320 a month up to 500. How often do those monthly charges get increased?
So I can tell you my experience, I have never seen a town, I've been at PSN/Invoice Cloud, our two companies, for 4 years, and I've never seen a town get increased, especially not in their first term. So for us, it's typically a 5-year service agreement is the first term. And when you're signed on that, it never increases. The only time that it may lower/increase is when you decide to resubscribe and go with us after another 5 years. But your online adoption might be higher by then as to where that cost would lower. Because we base a lot of our pricing, like Keisha said earlier, based on that number of online adoption, based on how many customers, how many bills, things like that. So those numbers may improve down the line. But I can't really tell us where things are going to be in 5 years. If I could, I think I'd be on a yacht somewhere. So we got to just deal with what we got in front of us.
Yeah.
This is Mitchell from Doxo to answer that question. Historically at Doxo, our prices have only come down. They have not gone up for the same reasons I mentioned before. We utilize the economies of scale to actually return those benefits to communities. Part of the reality of how our pricing model works is because we try to give away as much as we can for free, and a lot of people do take us up on our free e-check. Historically, over the nation, 60% of people do choose the free online e-check. And it differs from community to community. Some is like 80, 90%, some is lower. We help you to maximize it. But my point in telling you that is we actually have no subscription fee for many of our customers who are above 1,500 monthly invoice customers. And that is because we know the math. We know that we can give it away entirely for free above that number. And we will still make our revenue to support the project, support the company, and support our growth. When we go below 1,500 we call it potential payments. It's all three of us will have a different word to describe it, but all in essence is the same thing. Below that number, it is less consistent that we will get the right adoption level to continue standing up the operation, standing up the software, and turning it on all for free. So the reality is, it will not increase from $500 a month. The only opportunity is it goes down. It does not increase. Doxo prices have only come down since we started.
Thanks.
And I would say for express bill pay, I believe we've raised the rates once in 11 years. So the contract is 3 years. However, if Keisha is not happy with it, there's no penalty. She can cancel in 30 days. And that's fine. We don't have a problem with that. And it's pretty easy to get out of that contract. It's basically a 30-day contract each month, each year.
I'll note with Express Bill Pay that their fixed fees are $29 a month and they charge per transaction. So the 320 is based on roughly like currently how many online transactions that will go up the more people subscribe. So
Okay. So the 320 is going to increase.
yes. It's 55 cents per bill, which is slightly less than postage. So.
And then what about PSN and Doxo? Are their fees fixed, or are those subject to increase as more customers come on?
They have, so there's a $2 transaction fee for EFT that we are potentially eating. And again, that's up to you guys. You can decide that the customer is going to pay that and not us. For PSN, they have a 95-cent transaction fee that I asked them to, again, put into our category. And then Doxo doesn't charge anything for checks, e-checks or ACH transactions. And so the only transaction fee they have is for credit cards, which would be with the customer. So.
Keisha, do you mind if I jump in really quick?
Yeah, go for it. Sure.
I may have misunderstood one of the points earlier that one of the members had asked about the rates as it related to postage. So I wasn't sure if I missed it a moment ago, but at Doxo, there is no charge for paperless or e-billing capabilities. It's It's completely free. It's not a transaction cost that raises as your community grows or more choose to adopt online payment technology. We're not going to charge your community or your residents to send them an email.
Say Doxo in general has more of a fixed, they have that one fixed $500 fee, and they do less nickel and diming per transaction kind of stuff. It's a little bit cleaner fee schedule. That's something that sets them apart from the other two.
So the biggest deterrent that you see for them is the way you receive the delayed
Income.
right?
Yes, the actual interface, I think, is less clean as well. It's a little more limited as far as the website goes. And the $500, it'll take us a little while to catch up to that, with Express Bill Pay, the $320 is what we'd be paying ish right now. That will increase. How much it will increase, I don't know. Will it catch up to 500 at some point? Potentially. We only have 700 people transactions per month, so it's a question of if we think that that percentage of people will end up participating in specifically the e-check option. Another thing I was considering is us basically paying the e-check fee right now and getting people on board with it, and then not paying for it in the future. So, waiving it for a while until people get used to the system, and then, putting it back on the customers.
That would be more cost for Express and PSN, but not for Doxo.
That's not, yeah.
Correct. So that's specifically for if we did Express Bill Pay. Doxo's fee is gonna stay fixed, basically.
We said it was cleaner, hopefully a little bit more easier.
I don't know that it makes it easier for us. The bill we get from them would be one bill. Yeah, it's just a little easier to understand.
For the,
Doxo, or from any of them,
oh, they're all the same.
Yeah, like we're not gonna have to go through and parse out those payments ourselves. It'll all happen automatically. Doxo just has a cleaner fee schedule as far as literally looking at this sheet right now.
Yeah.
They charge $500. That's pretty much it.
That's it.
So,
I like simple.
but everyone else has, transaction fees or a specific fee for credit card, a different fee for ACH transactions. That doesn't mean it's more expensive. It just means they put their fees in a different place.
I'm cheap. I want to pay my bill and that's all I want to pay. And I don't want to pay 55 cents for a transaction or $1.95 for a transaction, because eventually that adds up. Now, a lot of businesses are going to build that in over time, and I don't know that, and I suck it up. But bottom line, but I think that's also reflective of a portion of this community that I think we need to be aware of. And this may take a lot. This may make a lot of the payments easier, but I think we still have to recognize, and I'm sure you do, that you're still gonna have somebody coming in and counting out.
There will always be
Yeah.
people who pay with cash and a check. That will never go away completely.
So,
Unless we stop accepting them. That'd be crazy of us to do.
The other way to look at it too is because if the town pays it, it's coming out of taxpayer dollars. And so I tend to lean towards, if you want the convenience of an online electronic payment, you should expect to pay for it.
That was kind of Ryan's point.
And minimize what it costs the town.
The problem with that is anytime you use a credit card, you aren't charged that anywhere else. If every time you went to a restaurant, they tacked on 5% fee, you get a little tip.
and some places do that.
They're doing it. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are doing credit card fees. We're not, but I mean, credit card fees are very, very rampant in lots of businesses, or cash discounts is the other way of spinning them for people. I have no idea why birthday balloons just flew by my screen. That is the weirdest thing ever. So awkward. I lost my train of thought. That was so weird.
At least you don't have a cat face.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank God. I did like the one person's cat though. It was a really cute cat. Anyway, sorry, focus. I think that one of the things we have to think about in this transition is how we can make sure that our residents and our stakeholders feel the least resistance in like terms of costs passed on to them. I think you're correct that people do expect certain fees to just be kind of par for the course when you're using credit cards. Doxo, that their check structure is super appealing to me, but I have concerns about the interface for town staff. But if it was just based on that alone, that's meaningful. I think that would be really meaningful for town residents too.
Certainly agree with that.
Well, and I think it's just something that, you know, it's another process that if we were to go with Doxo, that once you get used to that run given in that way, it just becomes the norm. So, any of them are better
If any are gonna work a lot better than. what we
Yeah.
have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the residents are gonna really like being able to set up auto pay.
Nope.
They're gonna really like being able to set up, being able to check their balance online without having to call us. I mean, there's some people that pay for multiple accounts and we mess that up sometimes because they pay with one check or whatever, and that gets confusing
And that checking the balance is available with any of the three, is that correct? Or
yes, Doxos will only be updated,
in batch?
yes, periodically,
So,
once a month, basically.
Okay.
So they will just have the starting month balance, more or less.
okay,
but PSN and Express is
Live.
more live.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because
Also,
you do end up fielding a lot of calls. What's my balance?
yes,
What's my balance?
a lot of calls.
I thought I paid,
Mhm.
when did I pay? Yeah.
And like checks, we will always get those, that's
Mhm.
okay. One feature I did like, I think on Express Bill Pay, is it lets us set up automatic transactions. We can help someone else do it on their account instead of them having to do it, which I know there are people that will call us and if we can help them with that, it'll be really great. So, if they want it. Yeah, that's something I like to.
And that's just on the Express.
Yes, I believe. The back end.
Could you clarify the question? Sorry.
Yeah, so right now the customer can set up auto pay in their own account. We couldn't set up auto pay for them though, in Doxo or PSN, I believe. We could log into their account with them if they came in the office, but it would be a back end thing.
Correct. In Doxo's world, the user themselves must, so part of our PCI compliance mandates that the customer is in full control of their payment details and when they schedule those payments. So we, through our support team, can help them understand how to do that live with them. But the staff at your office would not have the capability to set up someone else's automatic payments themselves.
I think that might be something that we don't want our staff getting
Yeah, I
involved
kind of
in.
agree with that.
So even though it seems to be a benefit, I think there's a liability issue that we would want to draw the line and say, no, we don't.
But-
Because we protect you have their passwords.
Yeah, that would make me nervous.
So the provider is safer.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have their password. We would maybe have their bank info, which by the way, people give me all the time. So,
Yeah, but you don't really want to be.
Yeah, that's, we're setting ourselves up for a potential situation there that, and it is, it's hard to define that line between trying to be nice and, be helpful, exactly.
It sounds like they're helpful. They can be helpful as a provider online.
Yeah. I'm just concerned too, though, with the fees. I think we're gonna see the fees, the monthly fees go up with Express. If this is, you know, as the user rate increases. So I think it's probably gonna be more in line with perhaps PSN, maybe not as high as Doxo, but
Pretty close.
yeah. So that's clear as mud. Thanks.
I feel like, I'm so sorry. Do I need to get more balloons to get everyone's attention? Like, that was so weird. I know, that was so odd. I honestly, I mean, I think any of the systems would be good. I do, like I said, the big standout to me is Doxo and the eChuck, and I do think that would be appreciated, but I feel like PSN seems like they have a really good handle on their customer service piece. I think that, especially, you know, from what, and I apologize, I believe it's Nick. If I think you mentioned that you guys have like pretty like dedicated specialists. So if we had residents that did have problems that they could call, it seems like everybody kind of has that, but maybe Nick just talked about it in a way that I wrote down that on my notes that it was good. I don't think this is a situation where we should go with like the quickest and cheapest option because it is so impactful to town residents. Obviously, we do need to be conscientious of cost because it is taxpayer dollars. But I think it's interesting that there can't be a waive on Express for training. I think that that's kind of low hanging fruit, and the other guys are willing to come in and train and sell for free, which is a big selling point to me as well.
All right, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I move to approve the contract for PSN.
Is there a second? Well, second.
Okay.
Who did you say? I couldn't hear. I just heard the contract.
PSN.
Okay. I was like, who are we talking about? Okay. So I didn't second. Sorry.
I was gonna say it. It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract for PSN. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passed.
PSN, make me
Thank
look
you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Okay, next we have hazard mitigation plan update and letter of intent.
Okay, so the county has started doing quarterly emergency management meetings again. I guess we used to do that prior to 2020 and those dropped off and they're doing them again now. So we had a meeting a couple weeks ago, last week maybe, to discuss just the state of the county in general and different emergency situations. One of the things that came up is that we are coming up on being due for a hazard mitigation update plan, which is required by the state. And so the county would be doing that update on our behalf. But what they're requesting is a letter of support from the town, a letter of intent from the town stating that we are intending to participate in that hazard update plan, which, you know, by doing that will keep us eligible for different grants from the state and from the federal government for hazard mitigation. So, and that participation is, we show up to meetings and we talk about hazards in town and we participate in that discussion, so.
So does this mean that you'll be attending them or someone on the board or a town administrator?
Me, unless you want someone else to.
No, I just wasn't sure how that would work.
Right now, we're just committing the town. It would be me.
You're worried it might be him. No, I'm good either way, and I just didn't know if that was something that you're planning on doing.
That second bullet in the letter First of all, reads awkwardly because of, conduct. Just. Anyway, it just reads funny to me, but it also refers to, actually being involved in conducting a vulnerability analysis. Which, is there any cost related to that for us? Okay, so the county OEM is gonna handle that analysis.
Yes,
Okay,
they just want us to come to, there's regular meetings where they discuss things. If there are, like, if there's a project or something that they want our buy-in for, that will be an additional request to the board. So
okay. Any other comments?
I'll move to send a letter to item 10 to participate in the regional hazard mitigation.
Second?
Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passed. Next we have Housing Authority Planning Grant Letter of Support. You're on again, Keisha.
yes, I wanted to give Dwayne an opportunity to talk about our meeting with CCRHA before I jump into this, since he is our representative.
Yeah, I mean, it's brand new. We just had our first meeting. It's very, very starting from the bottom. So, we discussed a few little possibilities, but mostly just how to put everything into place. Kind of that simple. That's all I really have at this point. But hopefully by our next meeting, which will be on Monday, we decided to jump ahead and have another meeting to try to get some more stuff in place. But yeah, it was a very productive meeting.
Yeah, so the next step right now is the county is wanting to apply for a planning grant, which would be asking the state basically to provide staff support so that we can get some of the basics of this entity off the ground. There is a financial match, and unfortunately, CCRHA as a housing authority is not eligible in and of itself to apply for this planning grant. So the county is going to apply for the planning grant, and we've been talking about it. And we intend that any matching funds that are provided for this grant would be part of the money that has been designated already to CCRHA. So we're not asking the board for any additional funding. You've already set aside $37,000 for CCRHA. That funding will just be, in this case, used for the planning grant match, or some portion of it as designated by the board, which Dwayne is the representative. So. Does that make sense?
Any comments or questions?
How much is the grant for?
We think $50,000 to $75,000. Amy's still putting it together, but part of the application is the letter of intent, or the letter of support from the region, the municipalities.
And they're requiring what,
20%.
20%?
It's in the.
So they're gonna apply like 37 versus 20.
It won't be probably the entire
No,
37.
just some of it.
Mhm.
But we're not the only ones participating in that.
Correct.
It's Idaho Springs and all the other municipalities have allocated some funds, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's not like they're just looking at Georgetown to pay their bill.
Yeah, it would be from the bucket at large that has been dedicated to CCRHA.
Okay. All right.
I moved to write a letter of support for the total grant in order to establish the third regional housing authority.
Second.
Okay,
Rob.
been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion also passes. All right. Next item we have is 2025 budget amendment, and this is to add Fund 33, which is the Foster's Place Fund. And we're not taking any action tonight. I'm gonna let Greg explain this, other than to set public hearing.
Yeah, so budget amendment requires a public hearing, and so this is just putting the on the table tonight, and the hearing would be at the next meeting, we would be asked to vote to the resolution.
Seemed pretty self-explanatory.
We just needed some time to actually get the notice in the paper
Yeah,
for the public hearing.
I'll make a motion. I move to set a public hearing on March 25th, 2025 at 6 P.M. for resolution number 7, series 2025, which establishes Fund 33, Foster Place Fund, and sets a budget for the new fund.
Second, Ron.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have ordinance number 2, series 2025. And this was an amendment to the Business Promotions, Commission Code.
Go on, Mary.
So I mentioned this a couple of meetings ago, that we discovered that the wording in the code has not actually been part of the process in selecting the commission members. And so just to kind of clean that up, it would still come to us for the ultimate appointment, but it takes it out of the hands the way it's written. And you can see what's struck by vote of the holders of current business licenses.
Yes,
So,
just clean.
yeah, it just makes it a cleaner. And obviously, because the promotions commission is making this recommendation.
Seems like you should make the motion.
So I move approval of first reading of ordinance number 2, series 2025, which amends the portion of the business promotions committee code regarding how board members are appointed.
Second, John.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 2, series 2025 on first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes. Next we have House of Signs change order billing for the railroad loop sign.
That is, this was discussed the last 2 promotions committee meetings. And in the first one, there really wasn't a lot of detail given. And as I said at the last meeting, generally, if a contractor wants to submit a change order, they have to submit a change order. They can't just bill you more later. In looking at this a little bit more, I get the sense from his response to my call and email that he did reach out, but he reached out to the manager of the project, which was the chair of our promotions committee. And so he probably did what he was supposed to do. It just got lost in communications. So I think he did contact the town through our representative. So in that case, I think we probably do for the additional one. And I don't really like the thing about keeping the old check and taking some money out that's just real money. It's much cleaner to just pay.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, I recommend that the town pay that, and that in the future, as we develop our purchasing policy, and procurement policy, that we work that into it, that project managers are people more directly tied in the town that we can keep track of.
But not a state.
Volunteer people.
Yeah.
I don't see any malicious intent here.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's not what I'm saying.
I mean, I still, Dwayne would like to be drilling these holes, but
We hired them to put a sign in.
but I think we should pay it. I'll move to pay the House of Signs $2,162 as compensation for additional cost incurred in setting a new railroad loop sign.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. One nay vote. The motion did pass them. And last agenda item we got is town administrator interview and selection process.
Friday,
Right, well, I think Thursday.
Thursday night.
Begins Thursday.
So we're starting the process Thursday afternoon. We're going to meet with all 4 candidates and give them a tour of town facilities and encourage them to visit with staff at each one of those when they go there so that people can get to know who all of them are, get a sense of where they're coming from, that type of stuff. And I think it works better for most people. My experience is that the majority of people don't like to speak in public. So if you have a room of 10 or 15 people, there's always gonna be several that don't say a thing. And by having them meet with people in really small groups, I think we're gonna get better conversations with employees. And then that will go from like 1 to 3, maybe a little bit later. We'll take them back to the hotel where they can freshen up and then come back for the open house meet and greet thing.
So are you just giving them a tour of the town facilities?
Yes.
So that they can talk to the staff, or are you giving them an overall tour of the town? This is the loop, this is.
Mostly town facilities.
Okay. And so you're gonna take 1 or 2, are you gonna take 1 or 2? And,
Gotta clean my car.
and then that kind of figures, but then, well. Okay.
Small.
So,
And the meet and greet is that,
4:30 to 6:30 at the old school.
That's for town persons.
What kind of refreshments?
We bought quite a few refreshments today, so hopefully they will meet everybody's needs.
Sparkling water or something.
so I just wanted to make sure that.
Crackers, all sorts of different.
We're not serving dinner though.
Well, depends on snack, how many bags of Cheetos you want to eat.
It's snacks.
Yeah, you can make it dinner if you ate enough of them.
and we're not encouraging too many outspoken people, so we're keeping it to soft drinks and water.
That's why, oh,
We're not
that's why.
letting the real juices flow.
I'm telling you,
And no talkative board members, like.
I probably should.
Well, okay, and speaking of, so because we're required to notice it if there's more than the 3 or more,
We're just gonna.
we're gonna notice it. So
we
feel
can't.
welcome to
So we,
go, sure.
so if we see 2 other people, we gotta leave.
No,
No,
we're gonna
notice it so that it is.
Oh, so we can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can go, you can even talk to each other.
Nah, I won't.
What is that?
Ever happen.
And then,
About that open house and what you envision the forum is, so that that's.
I think Pete, we'll let the candidates make introductory statements. I don't want them to wax on really long because they lose people. And most of it will be just them visiting with town people. I made up input sheets for each candidate and we'll have copies of each one of those at the open house where people can just pick one for each one, or if they only want to comment on one, they can do that. And it's real open forum. It's just basically write on a piece of paper, what you think of the various candidates.
And so we're not encouraging necessarily small groups and,
Rotations and all that.
yeah,
Yeah, and this
So
is
it's more of a single.
input to the board. This is not direction to the board. So when you see these, probably Friday, you can use them for input and what people think about the various candidates, but it's not a direction to you saying you have to pick this candidate. or that.
this is semantics. Can I suggest feedback as opposed to input?
Yes.
Because input
It's one way.
is an inference in my dictionary, and I'm not registered, that, so that it's clear to our community. Just because we recently experienced this, it just, you know, but we will review their feedback.
That's the intention. Okay. And then it took me until yesterday to get the response from the candidate that is flying in, and he did confirm that if we can hold his interview earlier today, that would make it like great.
Yeah,
So that makes sense.
Sure.
so what time are we starting on Friday?
The meeting will start at 8, the interviews will start about 8:30.
So at 8 o'clock, do you expect us here to kick off the meeting or are we?
We're gonna try to kick it off after the old school.
Okay.
So we
Oh,
can,
okay.
we can log into our Zoom account there, record it, and then record the executive sessions, the interviews. And then when it's done, you wanna come back here, right, when the interviews are done?
Well, we can, or we can stay there. It just,
Okay.
you know. We're trying to determine what needs to be published. We were trying to work around people requesting some time off. So if nobody has any objection, if we just clear out from the old school after the interviews, come back here, reconvene, the open meeting here. That way Bridget is here and she can set up for us. So, does that work for everybody?
And then we set up a meeting for next week.
Yes, on the 18th, which will be next Tuesday. And so what Joe can give us some more background on what to do for a motion and guidance and that kind of stuff, so that you're saying, communicating what your intention is.
So you'll zoom
I could do it if you'd like, I was gonna write a script for you.
in? Okay.
But you can preference this to have it, and I think script is fine. Script is all. Okay, script.
So we're anticipating, and maybe this is part of what you're passing out, we're anticipating that the interviews last an hour
Yes,
with 15 minutes in between for a break or conversation. We're gonna bring lunch in there.
yep,
And then have we extended our an invitation to our other panelists?
we haven't yet, because I didn't get confirmation what you wanted to do with that.
Okay,
You want
That you have the opportunity to give us feedback, from the public.
if you want to include them, we need to get a hold of them tomorrow.
We really should let them know either way.
Yeah.
so I recall our conversation was that we were going to invite
Yeah.
the selectmen and police judge candidates to be part of the panel.
Yeah.
But that and after discussion, but that the decision rests okay, with this group.
Right, yeah, correct.
I
So-
remember that being expressed.
So if, well,
But not decided.
so it's, but again, you know, we're a couple of days out and people have other calendar commitments. So, and I don't know if they're going to be able to attend or not, but we are giving them the opportunity. That's what I would like us to give them the opportunity to participate with also though with the understanding that they're here for the whole, that they're there for the entire thing. I don't want someone just popping in for one interview and then out to leave.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it works. That's what we discussed. It's for. I think we should stick with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't get to be there for the decision making, but they should be there. You know, I mean, I think that's an important commitment because we are going to have 2 new presiding members of the board really soon. And I think that if there is something that sticks out to one of those people, at least having the forum, they're for all intents and purposes, the next 4 years of their lives are going to be pretty intertwined with this individual. And it should be, their feedback should get weighted for sure.
So the expectation is they will come back here with us after the interviews conclude for the discussion to take place, and then they could be excused if we're continuing on with, I'm just trying to get this out here so we understand.
They can be here, because that will be an open meeting at that point. When you come back here.
That's still part of executive session if we're discussing our candidates and
Which I was envisioning being the executive session all being done at the old school. And once we closed out executive session, then we make the switch back here back to open meeting.
And there's a motion regarding 1 P.M.
Well, why do we like, cause it just seemed like it was more confusion when we went from like here and then the schoolhouse and then back. Why wouldn't we just stay there and just do it all and keep it clean?
Yeah.
We can.
We could. I was just trying to accommodate somebody who would be helping us set up that
True, but it's,
open meeting, Zoom meeting that wanted to take some time off that day.
yeah, it's just, if it just takes longer for us to get back. I don't wanna miss anything.
Okay.
Like I feel like we did last time with the bouncing back and forth, it just seemed like it just more so gets confusing for the public too, like you guys are there, you're coming over here. You know, it's just,
Well,
I just like to keep it
The
there.
public can't be involved.
But the public is watching us for everything that we do.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is the public can't be involved in the executive session.
Of course they can.
Huh?
Of course they can't. But
Okay,
that's not my point. It's, if
Okay.
we start out there, it's staying there and finish it and being done. Last time we come back here, and it's just the process of getting here. That just doesn't make sense to me. If we're there, then we're there.
Okay.
Why not just do it here?
okay,
I mean, it's the
That's
same, I
also
mean, that's what we
not
do here. We don't like decide to come out of executive session and go meet over at the schoolhouse. You know, so I mean, it's just, I get it.
Okay.
Sorry, Bridget, I feel bad, but it's like, it's all of us coming here or just staying there and finishing it up. I want it to be clean at the end of the day, so we don't get it back and have any more problems like we're still dealing with.
No, we're also asking for non-disclosures that our other panelists sign. Because they aren't under the same requirement as we are in that, so we are requesting that, or requiring that.
There's a lot of personal information.
Right.
at this age.
It needs to be clear that that NDA does not expire just when we make the announcement, because that is still privileged information that lasts forever. Yeah. So,
Well, and that's my question too, with having future potential selectmen. Is that, that's a question for the attorney. Is that all right for them to be in an executive session to begin with?
You can invite other people into your executive session.
All right, gotcha. For this type of situation.
But the important part is it's your decision as the board.
Okay, gotcha.
so Joe, I would ask this. I would feel more comfortable if once the interviews conclude and we begin that discussion, if you are able to be a fly on the wall, if you can zoom in for that piece, because I think especially with the additional players and how the conversation goes, the discussion, selection, whatever, that our legal advisor is crucial for them. So even though you're giving us a script, I think your presence, even Zoom, at that point, whatever time that is, depending on how the schedule rolls out, would be important for us to have you present.
I have two questions. The first question is, it sounds like you want me around late afternoon Friday, I can do that. The second.
It'll be still kind of early.
Earlier, I'm free, well, I just guessed late afternoon, I'm available Friday afternoon.
We're talking faster than on Friday afternoon.
And then I want to, I have not seen any communications about your structure, so I want to better understand it. So can someone walk me through what Friday looks like?
Fridays, it will be with the board, and it can be the additional candidates for office too, but it will start at 8 o'clock. We'll settle on interview questions. I've just handed out 2 different versions. And then when that agreement is done, the board will move to executive session, estimating it somewhere around 8:30. Probably a little bit before that, because we're going to interview to start at 8:30. And then it will go for up to an hour with 15-minute break, and another one, and a 15-minute break, and another one. So there's 4 interviews with 15-minute breaks in this.
So this will be one long executive session.
Yes.
Got it.
Jared did speak to this, and his recommendation was that the candidates for office not participate. It's just cleaner, but certainly that's your call. But that was his messaging, to you. So, I want to reiterate that we can make whatever you want to work, but that's preferable. And maybe it's just a matter of figuring out how to draw that line of how letting them hear these folks and how leading them, making sure the decisions with you.
Okay. I guess then it becomes a question of how, yes, they're hearing them, but if they have no opportunity to give us feedback and then sort of leave the room for the decision-making process, it doesn't do the rest of us sitting here making the decision a whole lot of good. We have no opportunity hearing their opinion.
But as candidates, they're.
I understand that. Which, if they participated, I'm just throwing this out there, if they participated in the public meet and greet, they can fill out the comment sheets and we get comment from them that we could take into consideration. So I'm just.
I mean, that's fair enough, but then they're just not involved. And that was the whole idea, was to have more people involved.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
And maybe there's a really, really obvious answer to this, but I know that there is a move in some municipalities in these high-level positions to do these interviews in open session for this reason. Is there a specific reason we want this to be an executive session? Is that the best practice for legal advice? Is it if we wanted to have the interview in open session, could we?
Yes, you
Sure. I thought we discussed that in the past too, Amanda.
I thought so too, but I wanted to ask because I wasn't.
Public meeting, but of course, that's not all.
Well, I thought that we were worried about confidentiality of personal information.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure this is like definitely a Joe question, and Joe is the man in this regard. I mean, if there's a best practice for it being one way or another, obviously I respect that, but I do know that there's been municipalities in recent years and entities that are doing things in open session, and I don't know where we stand on that.
The answer to your question is some municipalities do these kind of interviews in open session. Some do it in executive session. You certainly can do them in open session. If you would like to do that, make a motion and a vote on that as a proposed pathway.
At this point in time, I don't, and this is a stupid reason. I don't think we have the appropriate venue if we had a large physical turnout, if it was a regular session. I think by allowing the potential of 5 additional people, community members in the room who are participating in the discussion, and also, I mean, I'm guessing we're gonna take a gazillion questions and everybody's gonna ask a question, and those, our other panelists, our invited panelists, not the finalists, well, are going to have that opportunity to be just as engaged in the interview process as we are. And if we're taking into consideration their discussion and their input into our final decision, even though it's by this vote, and we're not asking the 3 other selectmen and the 2 other police judges, you know, they don't get a chance to vote, but we're listening to what they are gleaning from these interviews. That's closer to being a larger representation though, but you know, otherwise, the old school can't facilitate seating space. We can't sit in 6 hours here.
Well, we wouldn't want, I agree with you, Mary, because it's true, then people are gonna come and go, we can't just lock them in the room. So then that creates a disturbance too and stuff, so I'm with you on the manner, but logistics is really kind of tough for them.
Like Cameron, when she was one of 22 candidates for the special district, and I was a volunteer, so I just volunteered to be part of the process, and got to make recommendations, did the interviews, selected the finalists, and then gave our recommendations, and then the board in executive session actually made that decision. But in that case, and it was a county position, volunteers, I think there was one or two other volunteers that took opportunity to help with that process. So I don't see any problem with having some of the candidates involved.
All I'm saying, the concern is that we're trying to balance the commitment we made to the people who are running versus the logistics. I feel like the logistics of just either moving the meeting to open session and working with the old school and saying like, hey, this is a possibility. What are your options? Or we, I mean, yes, plan B, second door for Jerry, is that we do the executive session with the 5 invited panelists, but then they exit when we say exit, but that seems legally sticky. Or the third door is that they don't get to come, which is, I don't love, because I do think it's important. And I don't think that the feedback that we're going to get from the public meeting is going to be all that advantageous. It's more touchy feely at those things as opposed to fact based. And I think, it's very, very important feedback. It's really important feedback. And it's important that our stakeholders and the people in the community get a chance to have that voice. But I think if the balance is just the 5 people, I don't necessarily have a problem with it being an open session, but I understand that logistically could prove to be challenging. Open session would be the least offensive. I mean, everyone could say we did it all out in the open and that there was never, ever a question, which, I mean, again, the privilege of executive session exists for a good reason and should be protected. And so, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a way out.
I'm happy to have the additional select town, whatever we are, or selectmen candidates be a part of up until the end where we adjourn, where they've heard who we're planning on offering the position to. That's fine, let them be part of the discussion. We end up, taking the vote and they're there. I just think it would be messy at this point in time to try to make it an open meeting. And I would also, and we had this great public outcry that we need to be able to offer this interview in the public forum. I mean, we're giving them the meet and greet, that we're giving them that opportunity. We're asking for their feedback. We're inviting 5 other community members who have, some potential for sitting on this board with us. They're just as representations of the public as we are. I think we just, and
they took that next step, which was to open themselves up.
Yeah.
To join this volunteer board.
We just draw the line at that, and I know it's not, maybe the best way to do it, but we did discuss inviting them and having them a part of this conversation, a part of this panel, and let's stick with that. I bring them in if they can attend.
Yeah, it's gotta be a start to finish.
Yeah.
They're gonna come.
Yeah. So.
What is the reluctance of usually relying on Zoom to make the entire thing open? Is that possible or is that not possible at old school? It seems like there's concern with using Zoom at old school.
No, the old school's fine for Zoom, I think.
If we made it public, could we, if we made it an open session, the interviews, because the names are already out there.
Right.
Could we separate it that obviously the interview panel is all in person kind of thing, but the public could only Zoom in because we don't have a physical place for them to be in the room?
What some communities do is basically have what the room will hold and then have a Zoom option. And whether that is a Zoom option kind of in the lobby, as just outside, or encouraging folks to Zoom in from their home. But I think that makes a lot of sense as well, and so maybe that's a screen somewhere, but I don't know, you know better than I, the expectation of the public participation. So, and the.
Public attendance as opposed to participation.
Public attendance, there, fair enough. So, but there are certain meetings that are, well attended. And so, and they have it, it's a public hearing, so you have there are abilities, you have the ability, the authority to manage public input in a way that makes it beneficial and not too burdensome. So you can do all kinds of things like that, invite people to speak, instead of giving them, a good example is if you have people, 5 people who have the same, viewpoint, invite them to get together, to give each of them 5 minutes, give that group 5 minutes. Things like that, and so that's why we have examples, so there's lots of opportunities you have to have this whole meeting in the open and figure out a way to make on the fly, accommodations to encourage participation, encourage open sharing of information with you. And then you could either make the decision in open meeting or retreat, and we would recommend only just the board retreat to executive session if you make a decision in executive session. But you could also keep the entire process open. There are many communities that keep the entire process open, and you can just make that decision and treat it like a hearing more than anything else. So you would have, everybody would see the interviews, and then you would have the opportunity for folks to comment on who they like, much like a hearing. And then you would hear that as a group and then make a decision.
I think that one of the things that hurts us in it, not saying, and it's not in a nefarious way, I don't think people realize that there is options, like the general public. There's a lot of confusion over what executive session privileges look like to people and when we can use them versus when we can't use them. And so I personally feel like the more we can put things into open session without hurting the fabric of the cause and the goal that we're trying to get concrete town leadership, I think it's good if we can swing it. And because people, they seem to think that we utilize, and it's uninformed. I want to quantify that. Their presumption is not accurate, but it is out there. And so if there was an option to just let all of it be out there, I think that would be a happy option.
Just as Mary's pointed out, the room where we were planning on holding it, not hold many audience, it'll barely accommodate the additional 5 panelists and this board and the.
Correct. But he could use the other room, the room that we have lunch in. He's got another screen and he has a projector. He could project into that room very easily. He's got 2 other rooms there and he's got the screens to do it. And so they could pull our link up and run our link, and those people, if we had in-person attendance, they could easily be diverted to another room. Honestly, I think what we would see from it in typical fashion, one of the things that like the pandemic really brought out was increased attendance in a lot of meeting spaces, but all of it almost comes virtually. And it's a great option for like tonight when I can't come. Like I'm like so grateful that I have that option.
Yeah.
And so I think that for most of the people who would potentially attend, I feel pretty strongly most of them would come in on the virtual option and they would do it on their cell phones and stuff, but there's no way of predicting that. So, but Paul, I think, could easily dedicate one of those other downstairs rooms for overflow attendees, if that was the route we wanted to go.
The only thing I'll say is what I don't want is I don't want it to be an interruption, because we are actually doing interviews, very important job. So the only thing, before I was kind of with you, Amanda, and I see the point of that. I think that there'd be a lot of interruption because people are just not gonna stay the whole time. I just don't want to see people coming and going what we're trying to do, because this is when people leave here on public meetings. People are kind of crashing down the steps, or is what it sounds like. I don't know if it's, I don't know, I'm not really in favor of it.
I getting away from that, I was leaning towards some kind of a Zoom opportunity, but I'm pulling back on that. when I go in for an interview for a job position, and I don't care if you're the town administrator, or God, or whoever you are going in, there is there is some privacy there. And granted, you're still gonna have however many of us, 10, 12 people in the room, and you understand that, and I think the candidates understand, the finalists understand that. However, to be very candid in my response, if I'm being interviewed and I'm reflecting back on any of the activities that I am doing in my current position and sharing any information and responses to the questions, if I know that my boss might be zooming in, I don't know if I would answer the question in the same way. And so I think we're getting more honesty from perhaps, or maybe not.
With a small group setting rather than a large.
So I guess in that, and maybe that's just old school interviews, and yes, this is the public eye and everything, but I still think there's an expectation of some more privacy of the interview. You're sitting before the board, we've invited in a couple of extra panelists, but to have everybody have the potential to zoom in and watch me in an interview. I mean, we've all sat through interviews and said, gee, that person is really nervous, and then finally when you calm them down, I just think that adds one more piece that I would rather not have as part of this process.
I totally own I'm the outlier on this, and that I feel I can hear that I'm probably the sole proponent of the totally open session, and I will respect the board's decision, but I do think that we should examine like the merit of both veins of thinking, because by the same token, I could say, if you're not prepared to answer this question in front of all these people whose lives you're going to impact, then are you the right person for the job? If you feel like you have to hold something back, I think there is a lot of public scrutiny that comes into play. And, but again, I own that I'm the one that wants to leave the dirty closet open and let everybody see all the things in it. So, I say that from the comfort of my dining room. So I get it.
Every potential staff member, anyone that works here. If Bridget was applying, I'm picking on you because you're our most recent hire. If there were 30 members of the community sitting in there listening to all of those interviews.
That's a lot of extra stress on the folks.
I was gonna say, you're kind of creating an environment where you're not going to get the performance out of the interview that you want. Well, I have a feeling, I'm just saying that, I think if anonymity is squashed, he's probably gonna be cryptic with it, or he or she would be cryptic with their answer.
You also have to remember too, though, we work here because we represent those people. So then now we're kind of turning around and inviting all those people because we don't feel like we can represent them anymore fairly. I'm not saying I'm just like being devil's advocate here. We're put in place, just like the people that we're gonna invite to be part of this, that can sit at this board to represent this town. So it is, I think, sticking with the second session, yeah.
Amanda, I would offer too, that an important feature of a town administrator is discretion. And there are many things you don't want them to say in public that you would want them to tell you in a private setting.
I respect that very much. And like I said, I know I'm kind of the outlier, and everyone made really good points. So however we have to structure it, I'll be there.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, Daryl has a
I have one
question.
question.
Yes.
But I'm just saying this so I can understand, so I can write the script for you. In fact, I'd like some kind of direction in terms of what the group's preference is, and then I'll ask the question. But it sounds like you're now leaning towards an executive session of the actual interviews. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
With additional invited panelists with an NDA. with you present after the interview so that as the discussions take place and we are coming close to making our decisions or recommendations, that you are there as legal counsel.
Our recommendation remains not to invite, candidates for office to participate because of the nature of the privilege. And saying that and hearing that you'd like to do that, we'll try to figure something out to protect that privilege.
Okay. Thank you. So Friday afternoon, look at this.
And then who's doing the invites?
So we'll do that.
That's wrong. And like.
So did you want us to look at these questions now, or are we gonna do these on Friday morning?
I don't think Friday morning is good, but if you look through them and would give me input today or tomorrow, that would be great.
Number 8 is has to be struck because one of the finalists is not an interim candidate.
Were there questions in the packet or was that a late handout?
No, I can send them to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I sent someone in for my packet, so I apologize. Thank you for that.
The one list is the questions this board asked how many times for your candidates back in 2018. And the other one is questions that.
That Mary made up.
Yesterday.
So Mary put these questions together, and as you can see, I forgot to strike a couple of them came from our police chief interviews, and so instead of, oh, no, I guess I didn't correct it. But there are a couple of questions that you may recognize in here that we included from that interview. But they're more specific, my questions are more specific to tasks as opposed to.
And then between 8 and 8:30, we'll decide then in what order, who's gonna ask what question to make sure that it's consistent.
Yeah, because once we have the questions, you can allocate them briefly. Yeah.
All right.
One last thing, what I think I'd like to do is actually probably provide you a memo in advance of Friday, giving you our opinion regarding to what extent your privilege is at risk by inviting these folks in. And then giving you some opportunity to make some changes if necessary. Or desire.
Okay,
Good idea.
appreciate it. Yeah.
I just wanna, I'm just not sure if I could, I'm thinking through in my mind, I'm trying to figure out a way to make sure that the point of the executive session is to have a privilege, and to the extent that you expand that, is the extent that you may lose that privilege. I want to make sure you retain that privilege and are able to invite people.
There's a risk, I know that,
Okay.
I think we all know that,
Okay.
but I think that's great that we see that, however. The invitations need to go out to these additional people tomorrow,
Okay.
and it would look worse if we change our path. You know, unless.
When they show up.
Exactly, saying, oh, thanks for making the time, but no, we're only gonna let you do this and not this part kind of thing, so we're kind of gotta.
So it sounds like the decision, and I'm hearing the decision has already been made.
So you gotta make it work for us, please.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's, but thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Concerns? All right, we will move on. Police judge and board of selectmen reports. I wanted to come back to the board about the letter of support that you asked me to do regarding, I mean, we tied it in our discussion, we tied it to Senate Bill 25-069, which when I went to that actual bill, it does not address the broad variety of things that were addressed in the county's letter, and this is about I-70, trucks, traction requirements, fines for not complying, all of that stuff. Their letter addresses like the whole scope of issues that play into why it's such a headache when they don't have chains on in bad weather and the highway gets closed. And you have to deal with, do you let people in town, do you not? It snowballs into a big thing. So that particular bill only allows for the permitting of firms, private firms, to be allowed to assist with chain out. So if traction requirements are in effect and a truck doesn't have chains, they can buy them. If they have them, they can hire these companies to help them put them on. That's what the bill is concerned with. So I'm trying to come back to you and ask, do you want me to address more than just that Senate bill? Do you want me to address all of these issues? And should it be addressed to the governor? Or should it be more to our representatives, our representative and senator, so that they can then take it into consideration and move it further?
Essentially, what this is about is requesting another amendment to the bill.
Or lots of amendments.
So you need to either appear in person and say, we're recommending or asking that this bill be amended to include these items. Or you get a hold of the local representative and ask them to do an amendment for you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Okay.
makes sense. I mean, I think we can craft the letter that it's still in relation to that Senate bill. And correct me if I'm wrong, I also believe that there's a component to that impacts the visitor might be renting.
There was there was language about rental cars in it when I read the first one in committee.
But
unless that's been pulled.
No, the rental car stuff is.
It's still in there.
But so that feeds into though, and I think the county's letter is more of the direct or local impact. And so I can see that letter being crafted that yes, it's in relation to Senate Bill, da 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 da. And this again is our local impact as we're seeing it. And sure, let Joe Moose or whoever the other one is off the top of my head. I can't
Well,
remember.
Joe is national, he's not
Okay.
state.
Well, tell him to come back.
No, he's doing a good job.
No,
We keep him in.
So, but to, you know, to ask them to ask for this amendment so that it is more
Okay.
helpful to the local cause that we're seeing.
Okay,
Dylan Roberts, right?
Dylan's our senator, yes.
It may be past the senator, right?
Could, but you know, input the,
Merge them.
sure, okay, I just wanted some guidance because my understanding when we were discussing it at the last meeting was that you wanted it to be sort of in line with the county's letter, and the county's letter hardly even addresses the actual Senate bill, which I thought was the main focus, so, and I got bogged down in trying to draft a letter, so this is helpful.
You could write a better letter than the county one.
Well, that would be my goal.
Are
Okay,
you good with that, Amanda? Because you were the one that brought that forward to us.
I mean, I'm not doing much, so I could work on it if you want to share a draft with me, Lynette. I mean, I think that the goal is really to just, I mean, even if it is, like I said in the meeting, virtue signaling, something we can do to show residents and that we care about what the impact that the highway has. And so how we convey that, and you can share a draft with me if you want, but I also trust you.
okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Mary, you said you had something?
So in one of our recent CML newsletters, and I apologize for not being able to find my copy to bring it with, there was there's an opportunity next year in 2026 that there is a free recycling program that the state is putting together for municipalities. And I think it's worth our town looking into it to see how that may benefit us, because one, we know everybody, I mean, recycling has been the buzzword for a long time. We know that everyone doesn't pay to have it recycled. We know the transfer station has recently implemented fees that, even though they're not technically charging for recycling, they're charging for you to enter to get rid of your recycling pieces. It sounds like this program next year, and it is only a year away, still may be limited in its scope for recycling, but something is better than nothing. So I would just like us to be open to seeing how we might be able to bring that program to Georgetown. So it would be just us directing staff to kind of, yeah, I mean, I think everything is online that they're offering. There's like 6 little workshops and just to prepare, and then to get back to us at the end of the workshop training and share with us what the program looks like, so that we can have the details and see what needs, see if it fits what we would like to do.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay, next we move on to town attorney report.
I have nothing.
Okay,
Yeah.
And so, well, what I'll actually say is what I have for you in an executive session.
okay. All right, then town clerk report.
Sure, just a couple updates. We received our ballot envelopes and return envelopes. And so I will be stuffing those in the next couple of days. And then I have to get them sent out between the 16th and the 23rd. So we're right on track for getting this mailing election done smoothly so far. The other thing I wanted to update you guys on is we are currently doing a trial live stream. We've got that workflow back up and running. Tonight we're running one, and we're wanting to be sure that everything works as smoothly as it appears to be working before we declare it fully back. But things look good so far. We're back into the accounts, and we've got that available, hopefully.
Good job.
Thank you.
Take a moment to. Yeah, those are the big things.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that we're not fuzzy on the,
No, you are. Amanda's not. Amanda's not.
You are all very, very fuzzy. If I did not know better, I would think that I needed to get my eyes checked.
Make some more stuff go up the screen.
You know what I bet that was actually is someone in the audience reacting like celebratory, and that's where the balloons go.
That is like that. I will never get over that. Like that, like when you're in the middle, like very serious point, balloons just fly across your screen. It was great. So great.
listen, I wish I could see.
Bridget was so hungry.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
The buttons.
Okay. All right, thank you, Bridget. Next we go to Kasia's report, assistant administrator report.
But, I don't know why it's not in the packet, sorry about that. But some highlights are. So part of the Office of Emergency Management meeting that I had with the county, we talked about Code Red, which is the texting service that the Jeffco uses, dispatch uses. And it was mentioned to me that we do have access to that for emergencies. So right now, we are paying about $1,200 a month for our own emergency text service, which we can use for other reasons if we want. And so what I just wanted to throw at you guys was if you would like to continue paying for our own texting service, basically for non-emergency events. since we do have texting as an option already via Jeffco.
Have we been using?
Jeffco or Jeffcom?
I'm sorry, Jeffcom.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's not, is it a texting service where you announce, talent events?
We could, yes.
Have we used it a lot?
We have not used it at all right now.
Code
Maybe
Red,
for something we're not using?
Code Red's expensive. I mean, it's useful, but it's expensive.
Oh,
What happened was Rick and Jen had set it up and then they left. So like, I think the day that it started was like the day after Jen resigned. So, so I have not, implemented it yet. We do have access to it. We could use it, but we've not launched it to the public yet. And people would have to sign up for the non-emergency features of it. So, which I mean, is a cool option, but it is a lot of money. It's like
And there are
$12.
lots of texting options out there.
There are more affordable texting options that are not emergency service.
Plus, I think that that misrepresents that if you sign up for Code Red and you haven't signed up for Jeff Commons, that I think there's too much confusion there, so. And yeah, I think we could step into this, century that we're almost a quarter into and have some kind of a texting service for information. But I would say, let's not be Code Red.
I agree. I think it conveys emergency. Besides, it's gonna get confused with Lookout Alert. And we do definitely want people to be signed up for Lookout Alert, which is the emergency Jeffcom system. So.
Okay. Thank you for that direction. I also wanted to let you know that the county sheriff, Matt Harris, is talking with the Park County Sheriff on April 1st about leaf peeping management. So there are some ideas going around about that. As you know, it's a public safety hazard because there are so many people in town. It clogs up every single roadway. Unless we do some kind of traffic mitigation plan. So we do have a local one in place, but I just wanted you to be aware that the county sheriff is talking to Park County Sheriff, and some ideas like tolling or reservations are being discussed for Winella Path during leaf peeping season. The county is also conducting a TIMS training, which is traffic incident management, that I'll be attending since I sort of manage the traffic incidents in Georgetown right now with the sheriff's departments. And so I wanted to have a little more training on that on the 20th. And we got the hazard mitigation plan letter approved, so thank you for that. And then the Red Cross has also offered to come up and train Georgetown volunteers to handle events like the I-70 closure for whatever reason. But winter storm is the main one that we plan for, so. I'm also gonna be trying to schedule that at some point.
what does that entail? I mean, first aid CPR training and what?
Setting up shelters.
The Red Cross training,
Yeah.
it would be shelter management, but I think we probably get to sort of ask them for specific things. I haven't had an opportunity to go into details with our representative from the Red Cross. He'll be here on the 20th to walk the community center with me and Clarissa, who's our county Office of Emergency Management manager. And I can talk to him about it a little bit more at that time about what specific kinds of volunteer training we want to do. I think traffic management is a big one because for leaf peeping and for winter events, that's the main thing we've asked our volunteers to do, is to interact with people that we're redirecting back onto the highway or are parked in weird spots or whatever. But also shelter management would be the big one, not individual CPR kind of stuff, more like incident response.
Cause I'm on your list for the community center, so I just didn't know what, I'm up to date on first aid, CPR and all that kind of stuff and a lot of event management, but I'm not keeping on what the Red Cross, what additional things they would require.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about it, because they have volunteers we could call on in Denver, but if there's a big snow event, then it doesn't help us very much, so. So it'd be a good thing to have some volunteers that are trained up here. And, you know, I think that's like a really good thing to have. I'm also CPR certified, but I, you know, want the ambulance to respond to that. And part of the volunteer job is keeping the roads open so that they can, is more the important thing. We are discussing training for new elected officials, and planning a retreat for new elected officials, and also a town.
He does not want that to happen.
Left the room.
Spider?
Yeah, well, it was.
Switched now. Okay, Mary, you don't have to come to the retreat if you don't want to.
There's any spite.
Don't mess with me.
So I just wanted to mention it because those of you who will still be on the board after this, will be participating in that. So again, training so that new members will know the legal requirements of being on the board and the liability, and retreat so that you can discuss what your goals are, and then also a tour of town facilities.
And talking about things, meeting management, motions and seconds.
We should go over how this is a volunteer job.
We don't need to, because you mention it all the time.
And just to clarify, I guess, Greg and I have discussed it, but because our election happens on the 7th.
Yeah.
And our first meeting of the month of April is on the 8th, that doesn't allow enough time to settle all of the election before, and we won't be able to swear new people in the night of the 8th. So that'll be all of us on the 8th, and then the following meeting, the election should be resolved and accepted, results accepted, so, that's when the swearing in.
That's.
That shot in for 1 month.
Sorry.
Get those balloons, Amanda.
Opposite of the bowling.
That'd be fire, it would be, incineration.
Okay, you know, that's good to know though, because it always
Yes.
seems to be like, you know,
Usually there's a little bit of a gap, but there's no gap,
yeah.
so. Okay,
Yeah. I also wanted to just put a bug in your ear about this.
No, my brother just killed the bug, sorry.
A raccoon. Scooter up at the shop has very weak internet. So, and his computer is also ancient, and so we are working on getting him some new computers, and maybe a printer. That being said, and you know, we still need to get him a new computer, and I talked about this with Axiom, they're like, you still need to get him a new computer, but his internet's very weak up there. Because there isn't great internet that runs on that side of the highway. So we did get a quote for Starlink, and we don't think that it's reasonable. It's $341 a month. We think that's a little too expensive for the road and bridge shop. So we're not asking you for that, but I just wanted to throw it at you that someday, eventually, we probably will want to invest in internet infrastructure on that side of the highway, so.
Could we get that, like a router up there with our current, like,
But you have to have a signal first.
You have to have the infrastructure to put the router
Obviously, I'm a huge computer.
on. So I just wanted to put that bug in your ear. And then I also want to bring up Beth Luther right now is working with Creighton, who is Centennial Opportunity Fund, the Soukups, on potentially getting a fitness court over by the lake. And she is planning on using some funding from the Soukups to provide a match for a grant and another opportunity. through a group called Local Artists. So I don't believe that there's any sort of intent to use town money for this. But it is cool, and I wanted you two in particular, hopefully to be involved in the next meeting, since it will be Ward 3. And it's sort of an interesting, it's like the size of a tennis court. Half of it is open for yoga, Pilates, Zumba, whatever. And then the other half has specific equipment on it for pull-ups and different kinds of jumps and things like that. So
Is that what they're putting in that space between the townhomes and the?
So far, there isn't a plan to do it, we're talking to them about.
yeah, so
And
Ben's
if I-
planning on applying for a grant, which is why I want to tell you about it, because
Thank you.
the town, you guys have to approve any grants that we decide to pursue.
And I think there's one of these, I wanna say in Lakewood.
There are 2 in Lakewood. Mhm. There's a map if you're interested in seeing.
Could
it.
you send that? And then,
Yeah.
cause some of my neighbors also were gonna wanna know where Beth and folks are thinking about proposing this.
So
And I would like to keep them fully informed.
it's gonna be on his property with the intention that it gets turned over to the town as a park?
So there are 3 spaces that they're developing over there. One of them, they're calling Linear Park, which is gonna be sort of going from Argentine to the waterfront-ish. They're actually bringing that to the DRC tomorrow night, if you're interested. No, sorry, Thursday night, if you're interested in seeing the proposal for that. It is currently on their private property. But the idea is to, I think, give it to the town with maintenance fees staying with the HOA, so they're not putting all of that maintenance money on us. But giving it to the town to prevent any future owners of that lot from restricting the use of that park to the public. So that's the one park that they're working on, Linear Park. They're also working on an amphitheater closer to the Cabin Creek side of their lots. Again, currently on their private property, would be something that they want to give to the town for maintenance. And we're not totally sure where the fitness park would go. It can't be within 100 feet of the children's park, because the fitness park is ages 14 and up. And so they just want it to be distinct from any kids' parks, so that it's not mistaken as a children's park.
But most of this will go where they were parking for the pond hockey.
It's all along the lagoon front. Mhm.
Wasn't Steve against the whole fitness thing?
Steve Calvin? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was like some debate over that.
Okay.
I remember Steve saying, well, I know that Beth has a lot of friends who's like said, well, what, when are we gonna get a fitness, or we wish we had a fitness center here, but. I wonder if that population is small enough that, it wouldn't get used as often as possible, and Steve thought. Better use for that area was just to have it.
If it's private though,
They can do it.
they can do whatever they want, and there was discussion in this board as to whether or not we wanted to accept any of their donations to add to our parks, that adds to our expenses, da 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 da. So,
This was supposed to be maintained through the HOA.
yeah, there is a section over there somewhere between Cabin Creek and the original townhomes that and not 100% on the location, but there was supposed to be some public parking. And though it's kind of hard to, for lagoon use, for lake access.
Sure.
And, because of the ongoing construction, it's difficult to know where that area is, but as you proceed with any of this, especially if you say if something is supposed to be between Cabin Creek and whatever else, I'm hoping that they're not taking away from that parking that was supposed to be a designated parking lot or a parking area. And so, depending on where Cabot Creek's property ends and where the public parking is supposed to be, that's the vicinity I think it's supposed to be in. But I would have to go back and look at the original plans, or you can go back and look at the original plans.
I'm not aware of any parking obligations that they have made to us in writing. If they have verbally told us they would do that, I don't know about it. So, you know, something I do want to make sure we're doing is writing anything down that they commit to as far as the parks go.
I'm remembering something like this.
It was in the original plan, of course, I
Yeah.
know that they haven't followed that, so, but.
It'd be good to go back to that.
But especially if we're bringing in additional, or they're bringing in additional features that public parking needs to be addressed.
An amphitheater seems like
An
a
additional
fair
parking
to
need.
deal with too, because of noise to local lagoon residents and all that is involved.
I think it's facing I-70.
It is.
Yeah, and, but any
But they're
any
putting a
more
speaker
theater
in
in your
your
living is.
Bounces.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cabin Creek has, very specific stuff
Yeah.
to limit
Mhm.
outdoor
I
noise.
thought I saw the rendition and it looked like it was facing, but I don't know the acoustics.
So it might be great to come in to talk to you guys about the amphitheater, because that is something the town staff has requested him to do. So, you know, that is our impetus. If you don't want us to do that, then we should stop him from working on it.
I would like to hear more of that in the open meeting with, and where folks that live down there could come and hear that, because I mean, just how, when they, at the pond hockey tournament, just by switching 90 degrees, how you put one of the big speakers means a lot about the amplification and how it disturbs other folks down there, so.
Okay.
And if it's facing the mountain, there's a lot of lakeside flats that are probably in between that amphitheater and the mountain and all that.
Got it. I see what your point is.
Kurt is very excited about that, so. Okay, I think that is all I have for you.
Okay. Then we're on to you, Greg.
Well, we already, I think, exhausted discussion about the town administrator section from this. I also, a week or two ago, participated in a meeting with Commerce Bank officials. They have banks all over the country, but they do a program called, I call it commercial cards. I think they changed the name of it since I did it the last time. But with this program, you issue credit cards to your employees and you have total control over them. You can change what the purchase limit is, you can change when they work, you can turn them on and off, you can do all sorts of different things with them. And when you get the reports, they download into your accounting system by line item. So you aren't just having a credit card and saying, these are all the charges to a credit card. Because a lot of times those don't match what your line items are in your budget, so they just mess everything up. And right now, we are using debit cards. So when people use a debit card, it debits it directly to the bank. It doesn't even come through our accounting system. We have to find it and then we have to go back in and enter it. And I don't think it's really good program to let people or let the bank or our users charge things directly to the bank account.
So are you proposing everybody gets a credit card or department heads?
So this is, everyone gets them, and we could limit it if you want people not to get them. But it seems like a lot of times somebody will be told, can you go to the whatever store and pick this up, and then they don't have the card, so then they have to borrow it from someone else, and then you lose your ability to track it.
Yeah, we have, that system set up with directors and department heads, with about 300 employees. And it's nice because all the drop down menus come up, but the more cards you issue, you also have to track those receipts. And that can be, Interesting.
Well, the advantage of giving them to every employee is then if there is misuse, you can find it instantaneously. If they're borrowing somebody else's card, it gets a little muddier. I've one time had an employee who, this was in Kansas, and decided to take a trip to Denver for the weekend, and he wasn't working for the town after that very long. You know, still, we found it instantaneously.
I could see town hall staff, but I would ask, how frequently would some of the road and bridge staff, not Scott, you know, need to have that access? It doesn't happen frequently?
They probably use it more than anybody.
Oh,
The
okay.
road and bridge does. The town's not anything. We go to Drum's Market. They buy stuff at Home Depot, they buy stuff at the Georgetown Market, they buy stuff at Napa Auto Parts. They buy little things all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we're small enough that we're not usually around 300, but, you know, I just don't, you know, just wonder if road and bridge as a department wouldn't have one. And then anybody, you know, could grab it, but you bring up a good point that if you know it's this card, anybody, you know,
Yeah.
where'd you buy it?
Well,
We can
it's
see
just
that
more code,
Yeah.
it just increases the.
Scooters buying Red Hots all the time.
And then we met with, Dave Straley and
Ron Thornton.
Ron Thornton last week about the issues with the traffic and directed off the interstate, right back on the eastbound interstate. And we talked about ways to involve what we've had before of some volunteers that can help direct traffic. One of the things Dave suggested that I've been involved in these and didn't really even think about putting it together here, but it's a group called a CERT team.
Yeah,
Citizens
I got
Emergency
that.
Response
Yeah.
Team.
I went to that training.
They work really well in lots of communities.
Right.
And we could put that group together and get training for them specifically in dealing with the types of emergencies and events we see here. And they're often really dedicated volunteers that like to do public safety type issues.
Management is important, but I also think the philosophy of trying to keep Georgetown open as much as we can for these wayward travelers who want to get off, who want to eat. And, you know, maybe the road's gonna be open in another hour, it's all our best guess, but they can kill some time. In our businesses, we promote ourselves as a tourism town, and then we lock the doors when the tourists really need us. You know, and then the other side of that is, then we complain to our businesses because they aren't open on certain holidays for the tourists, which reflects back poorly on us, and so how are we supporting them? So, you know, yes, I understand it can be a nightmare, but I think there's levels of that nightmare that can be managed. It just doesn't mean that, you know, 7-day shutdown and everyone's
See,
seeing
the
the car.
important component of this though is don't just say, come on, everybody come here. That you need people having some traffic control abilities that keep traffic moving through the roundabout, that don't have them stopping in the middle of the road and parking and leaving their cars, that we have some logical control over the situation so that traffic keeps moving.
And one thing about that training that you were talking about, everybody that went to that training got like a green hard hat and a safety vest and, you know, basically a backpack full of supplies. We went over like more traumatic events, like if there's like a level 3 trauma or, you know, an explosion or some sort of, you know, event where the highway shut down, but it really dovetails into the whole snowmageddon management, you know, if you gotta, but the one thing you gotta do is you have to have consistency with whatever everybody's wearing. Cause if some guy in a hoodie comes up and tells you to get going, it's like, who the heck is that guy?
Yeah.
But if he's wearing a safety vest with the same logo on the back, he now is identified as an emergency worker, and it's just.
We do have safety vests with the Georgetown logo on, so.
And then finally, one other thing that we talked about in the last week. we need to work out a better bathroom system at the road and bridge shop. Using porta potties just isn't a good long-term solution. And we have used this company before, they placed bathrooms in various parks and things like that. But these things work really well. We visited with Ryan, he's supportive of putting in a toilet that has a vault under it. He just doesn't want to put in a septic system under it, and I totally agree with him on that. That ground is not well suited for septic.
So it won't perk. It won't perk.
No,
Okay, so you can't bleach it.
so we're just talking about the vault. And if at some point someone develops something to the north, we could extend the sewer main and just poke a hole into that vault and drain the sewer line directly into it. So it has a long-term solution, not just a short-term. And this probably is a budget issue, but I think it's good to start looking into it now and getting prices that we can put in a budget and start planning for it for next year.
Are they heated?
They can be.
Oh, that'd be.
We're cold 9 months out of the year.
They make heaters.
Yeah.
I've seen those before, they're nice.
Mhm. And we would only need a one holder, so to speak, so, you know, it's not like there's that many people out there. So we could get by with one of the lesser expensive models that they have. So I just wanted to let you know that this is something we're thinking about too. That's it.
Okay. Any other matters before we go into executive session?
Did we, Greg, ever get a response back from the sheriff's office as to were our services impacted when they had their emergency event?
They were not.
Okay.
It was a different patrol.
Okay.
So it was not, like the people that Dave Straley supervises, it was not his people, but they are dealing with this the way sheriff's law enforcement should be dealing with these kind of issues. They're offering counseling, they're giving people administrative leave, they're doing the right things.
Oh, no, and Hackman is important with their needs, but I want us to recognize our police needs.
But he said it has no.
Right, they've got a lot to deal with, but, you know, they're definitely impacted staff, so I was just wondering if they had any problems with providing our services.
Dave was in today and said he apologized for not being able to be here tonight, but
Next Thursday.
he'll be in at our next meeting.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
okay.
I move to go into executive session under CR. Executive session under CRS 24-6, 402, 4B and E for conference with the interim town administrator, town attorney, and appropriate staff to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators concerning the McHugh and Gaskins versus town litigation and the capital prize and line litigation. Further move to reconvene the open meeting at the conclusion of the executive session to take any actions deemed necessary.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm probably not gonna join you guys in executive session. If that's okay, I'm kind of hit my my limit, and I will get caught up.
Did you vote aye on the
I did.
motion?
Yeah, I
Okay.
voted aye on the ocean, but I
Okay.
won't attend. Sorry.
All right, appreciate knowing that we don't need to wait for you. Thanks, Amanda.
Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so any opposed? Motion